Okay,
Alright, we're on.
okay, welcome everybody to the town board work session of Tuesday, December 5th, 2017. First thing on our agenda is a basketball court, topic exemption from zoning and permitting. And we have two members of our environmental review board here tonight, Phil Flank, Dr. Flank, and Ivan Older. So welcome.
Thank you.
And so a little background. Quite honestly, I personally think that two of these topics should be combined because we have for years we've been talking, and the rec commission's been talking about the basketball courts and trying to find a lot of different locations, and we have a lot of background information which I don't know if it was forwarded to you guys or not, but we can certainly forward it to you. But they've been studying this for literally 15 years and it's all documented. But and we finally decided on a location in the back by Town Hall, and there's two specific locations that we had a company study for us. And one of the locations involves a wetland buffer zone that we would need.
I think technically they both are.
I think the whole area is actually, I think the whole parking lot is pretty much
Yes, the whole,
above
yes.
this, because there's a stream right there, and it's as
Right.
long as 100 feet from the stream. But so, you know, we have every intention of working with the environmental review board on this. We have to, but there are certain conditions when we can exempt ourselves from the zoning requirement. Now, the reason I also say that this discussion should be part of another topic that's on the agenda tonight, which is an alternative location for Smith Street for construction storage, is because we actually found out that this was a wetland buffer. Well, I should say I found out, and I think a lot of town board members found out when we were removing as much of the ELQ staging area to the back of Town Hall, and we said, why don't you take down that hill there, we can create a lot more space, and they were ready to do it, and then we found out it was in a wetland buffer. That was the first I learned, that is a wetland buffer, and then we put the halt on that. So that was that about 2 months ago, and that's when we then went to the ERB. We scheduled to appear before you guys for the basketball court because we realized we had this issue to deal with the basketball court. Because the basketball court encroached on that as well. And we did appear before the ERB a couple of weeks ago on a Monday night when you guys had your normal meeting. And actually then 2 days later, we got an email from somebody on Smith Street. Now, we've been using Smith Street as a staging area, the bottom of Smith Street.
Well, storage actually, just
For storage, right. And they've complained about it they've been complaining about it. We actually used to do a lot of staging over there, and then we used the back of Town Hall. That's where, that's what prompted us to move to the back of Town Hall as much as possible, and remove some bushes in the front of Town Hall, and use the front of Town Hall as much as possible, but we were using Smith Street a lot more. We cut back on that, but we were still using it for storage. And then one day, Wednesday, 2 days after we appeared before you guys, we get an email from a couple neighbors on Smith Street that outraged that there was a big truck came delivering heavy equipment with kids, little kids at the bus stop. And they were furious. And we basically read them, we had Kaz come to the meeting. Kaz is the construction manager for Boswell, and we basically, Jill read him the Riot Act, and we said it's absolutely unacceptable, obviously, not to mention the liability. And so they removed all stuff from Smith Street. I think they started to. I don't know if they finished yet. But as of today, as of Monday, they were starting.
Yeah, I think they finished today because they put topsoil down,
Okay.
which,
They put smelly topsoil down, but
Yes.
whatever. People complained about the smell. But they put topsoil down today. So we need to now find another spot for what we were using Smith Street for. And we are clearing some more bushes in front of
all cleared.
Town Hall, and but we're still looking for other spots. And the hill is an area that's being considered, but we are looking for other spots. Now, part of the reason it's not just replacing Smith Street, it's also, we have more equipment coming. With the sewers, we have a lot of more pipe being delivered, we have a lot of I don't know if they got all the actual manholes and the sewers, the actual cement castings. And then we also have our lights and all that stuff coming too. We have a ton of stuff coming that we have to find space for. So these are the issues we're dealing with, so it's not just the basketball court. It's also this, we need an alternative location for Smith Street, and we need additional locations for storing all this stuff.
These would be temporary storage, right?
It will be temporary storage, yeah.
Be about, 6 months.
I mean, the whole thing about the basketball court anyway, we wouldn't be doing that anyway till this whole construction is done, because we're using that space for storage, I mean. So, it's all temporary storage, but we do need additional storage space. And that's why it's on the agenda tonight. I personally think these two conversations should be merged, but, the point is though that these are two issues we're dealing with.
But I think before we even have any conversation further about the substance of the issue, Ed, can you explain what the legality of the issue is? Meaning, what is the foundation and legal framework that this could even be a potential area to explore?
So the town board has the option, under a line of cases that goes back to the 1980s, to exempt a municipal project from local zoning and land use permitting requirements.
Is that local law?
Is that what?
Local law?
No, this goes back to a New York Court of Appeals case that was decided in the late 1980s. It's called County of Monroe.
Town of Monroe.
County of
For
Monroe.
those people who may not know, just
And-
the Court of Appeals is the I'm not saying you don't, is the highest court in the state of New York if you're listening and.
Right, and that case involved a situation where a county wanted to expand an airport, and the county of Monroe, and the city of Rochester said, well, wait a minute, we wanna take a look at that, we've got some issues. You've gotta get site plan approval, you've gotta get building permits, there was a hotel, and different aspects to the expansion. And they couldn't get on the same page. So the case goes all the way up to, as Jeremy said, the highest court in New York, and the court said, you know, that's gonna be exempt, because they looked at a number of factors that were involved in that case. And the factors, if you look at the draft resolution that's in the packet tonight, those 9 enumerated factors are the factors that court back in the 1980s said, this is what's important, this is what we should look at.
This is the balancing of interest.
Exactly. So you fast forward to today, and over time, that test, which came out of a case involving 2 different governmental entities, is over time now applied to.
Two governmental entities
Right,
within the
two
same
separate- yeah,
municipality?
The county of Monroe and the city of Rochester, so it's intergovernmental dispute. Well, over time, courts have said that same balancing of public interest test should be applied when you've got a project within a municipality, and the municipality wants to exempt the project from review by its own permitting boards. So you apply the same 9-factor balancing test. So in the draft resolution, I've laid some of that out, and the idea was that it would provide some discussion points for the town board tonight, and getting input from the public and members of the ERB as to, but, you know, this is something that's within the town board's discretion. It's your prerogative whether you would like to essentially exercise the option to bring all of the decision-making for this project under one roof. So instead of having parts of it before other boards, it would all be before the town board for decision-making purposes. And again, the resolution that's there is really intended to provide some talking points for tonight's work session, for the town board to start going through those factors, weighing them, talking about them, and we can build some of that.
But I actually wanna start at a little different point, okay? So, because I think this gets more to the crux of
I'm
the
missing
issue.
it in the packet.
That's why I pulled it up.
Yeah, I don't see it.
I don't think it's in the packet.
Yeah, it's not in the packet.
I went offline, I saw it.
It's not
I checked, cause somebody asked me that,
I checked
today,
it, it's not, it wasn't up,
I wonder if
Yeah, I don't see it,
it's,
I have it in my packet.
and it's not in this packet. It was in the one that was emailed to us.
I also saw it on e-codes though.
No,
No,
absolutely
no,
not.
it's not in the,
So, anyways, I think that, I just wanna just add one other layer to this, which
Print out
is,
copies now so we can just
Yeah, I
have a-
can go.
which is sort of the timing issue of all of this. Because I think what's sort of not being sort of addressed is that the basketball court and the playground, since it does fall into a wetland buffer, under a traditional process would go in front of the environmental review board, and then there would be some collaboration to come up with the best alternative. And that collaboration, as far as I can tell, since there's only been one meeting, as far as I know, has just begun. And that for us to unilaterally, without seeing whether or not there can be a meeting of the minds, because if we could lay out our case saying, this is why the town board feels that this is the preferred solution versus the ERB laying out their case, and we can either come to agreement, we can agree on some things and disagree on things, or we could end up at a different thing and then take the action, because then at least we've laid our case. I feel in some ways for us to make that motion before the basic process has even had a chance to begin, is premature. Now, I get that there's pressure and that there's this desire to conflate storage with the basketball court, but maybe it's really more a matter of principle and respect. And I'm not sure that there aren't alternate solutions. So I did talk to Kaz to say, really, what is the thing that's most pressing driving this? And it's the sewer work, which is not so much the future lighting work when we go and we put in the sidewalks. It's not, it's not so much those big huge culverts which can be put in certain places. The main thing is that it's the
Smelly dirt.
smelly dirt.
Yeah,
Right.
it's gonna stink.
Well, and he's not even sure it's gonna be so bad, because he's already been filled once when they originally put in all of those things.
It can go down 12 feet.
So, it's unclear, he wasn't really sure, so I said, well, how much space do you actually need? Like, how much space do you need for this dirt to drain? If it's dry, you can put it in the trucks, they take it out, but if it's wet, it needs to drain. And that, what they would prefer to have is they prefer to have a soil, not a impervious surface to put it on, because it would be better. Well, I said, how much space do you actually need to store? How much do you need? And let's just say it's about 300 square feet. So, and that, there may be dry piles that get, there's ways to kind of stage the taking away of the soil, or taking away, drying out and putting back in, whatever it is that you guys decide ultimately to do. So, for 300 square feet, to a certain extent, I'm just wondering if conflating them before we do the research to see if there's alternate storage locations is penalizing, it's not even penalizing, it's abrogating process for a short-term problem.
Well, we still need, I'll read you the email that Kaz sent today. We have, putting aside the basketball court, because again, this isn't being done for another year, or maybe less, but it's not till this construction is done, because they're using the back area for staging. They need space. So ELQ, this is the email, ELQ has agreed to stop using the staging area at the southeast corner of South Greeley and Smith Street for any activities with respect to the streetscape project. In lieu of using Smith Street staging area, we've agreed to increase the size of staging in the front of Town Hall for the storage of materials that are currently being stored on Smith Street. I spoke to Mike Nowak, he's the guy from ELQ, because the guy's writing us emails from Oswell, and Ben Venezia of ELQ. And while the additional storage area in front of Town Hall will help, it's not going to be sufficient. The additional area in close proximity to the project for the excavated material that will be removed during the sanitary sewer installation. The material will be extremely saturated due to the depth of the excavation and in need of an area to let it dry prior to being hauled off-site. This material will be made up mostly of organic earth material that expels odors which aggravate the public. They need additional area that can be used for the site. Any help would be appreciated. We have to come up with an area that they can put this soil and use it. And I understand, and again, I understand that some people would say it's convenient to talk about the hill for the basketball court. I get it. Believe me, that's very obvious to everybody, but keep in mind, We learned that this hill was part of the wetland buffer when they were gonna use that area for staging. That's when we learned about it. Because they needed to use that area, and then we put a stop on it when we found out it was in the wetland buffer. But here we are again, needing more area, because Smith Street is not gonna be used. So we need to come up with additional area, and that hill has to be part of the discussion.
And the reason that that's the winning site in my mind is based on the Smith Street experiment, if you wanna call it that, is it's the only location really, or the best location that is isolated from the neighbors, you know, so we're working in this very confined area that's surrounded by residential neighborhoods, obviously. And so this area is on one end the commuter lot, on the other end the town hall. And so, you know, for this very dirty job that we're endeavoring to do here, that's the rationale. In other words, to do it on Smith Street, or to do it, you know, at the periphery over by the firehouse, or do it anywhere else, there's houses that are directly adjoining those locations, and it's just not feasible. I mean, we're burdening, you know, as we just discovered, and we know, we're burdening the residents enough. I mean, we have this little island of, you know, separation, if we wanna call it, and it's really the best of the worst, if you wanna call it that.
So my take is, and first of all, both Rob and I and Jill were at the meeting with you, so you guys, the ERB, Owens,
As well as our rec commissioner.
as well as Ike from the rec and Brian from rec commission. Yeah. There's really, in my view, two separate issues. And they're married but also divorced from one another. Meaning that paramount for people on Smith Street, and it's easy for us to say because we're not living there, is their safety and well-being and quality of life. And I think to a certain extent, the conversation can just end right there. If my son or daughter has a truck backing up when I'm picking up from school, not okay. And whether you're on the ERB, town board, or anything in between, or nothing at all, simply not right. I don't think we would dispute that. Moreover, these people have to deal with the very real noise at night and now potential stink. But that has nothing to do directly with the hill. They're separate issues. One issue is safety and quality of life, another issue is the environment and among other things. And there's an argument to be made that having this under one roof, we'll call it, for efficiency purposes, is, you know, we still have the same burden and responsibilities as the ERB would in terms of whether secret is required.
Secret's always required.
Right, so I'm saying, so we still have the same responsibilities. But at the same time, let me take a step aside for a second. Have we, as a town board, have we done this before? When I say we, meaning any generation of the town board that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
It's a pretty
So-
significant statement, don't you think?
Yeah, but again, I think everything rises and falls on the merits of each thing. I mean, it's the first time for everything, so.
There is.
So, I mean, that,
Does this situation merit this kind of unprecedented action?
I mean, we haven't done construction like this since
but if-
ever, so, you know, it's a little
If
extenuating
I
too.
just, so if I may just finish what I'm saying, you know, sitting with the town board, with the ERB, there was certainly some differences in general opinion. For example, we usually discussion alternative sites and what does even alternative mean? I mean, what's a threshold for acceptable alternative? And you may disagree, you collectively mean the ERB and me collectively meaning the town board. And I don't think that there would be very much, I wanna go on a limb here and say, at least for myself, from an alternative site location for this setup, there is nothing in my mind that would be better for this community than where it is proposed, which is here downtown, for the reason that you already have a playground there, so you're limiting what you're doing, even if you're expanding it. You are drawing younger children to that location as opposed to Bell, which is a different age group playground. It is an amenity that will be hopefully top shelf, just generally to draw people to downtown. And if you marry that to a basketball court and you make it more accessible, not less circuitous from the rec field, you're giving a people a reason why it's not just Chapel Crossing with the new shiny toy, but we should come downtown and be downtown. you have the police department right there, you have the library right there, you have Bell Middle School right there, you have the train station right there. I don't know why I'm more looking at you, but, yeah.
It's gonna be a
And
walkable
shops
downtown.
and
restaurants.
Right, and shops, so right, so it's all right there, so that issue, but again, that has nothing to do with whether or not we should, for lack of a better term, usurp the ERB's power. I've spoken to John Rosenblum for probably roughly 2 hours over the past week and change. And you know, one of the things that came up was, you know, John, I'm concerned that if we don't take some sort of action relatively soon, we're gonna be another year out. And it's gonna be just another thing that doesn't happen. Doesn't mean we have to do it now, no, it doesn't mean we have to do it now, I'm referencing the playground. But we're gonna be another year out, because if we don't start until September, we come to a resolution, September, we don't come to a resolution until March or April or May, then you're not ripping up the playground then, that's just simply not happening, you're gonna keep what you have. And to some extent, assuming with what Rob said, I wasn't aware that we needed to go to the ERB, and arguably that's my fault as a town board member, but, you know, I don't know, I rely on getting information, but ultimately the buck stops with me, so should I have gone, and again, I say, we collectively gone to the ERB 5 months ago? Probably, yeah, because we would have been a lot further along in the process. But, and maybe we
We've
could
been
have
doing
had
it for 15 years, so there were plenty of opportunities along the
Right,
line.
whatever it may,
realize we needed
whatever
the
it may be, I
You had 15 years to check the town code and see if you.
but Ivan, I'm not trying, it's
Well,
not,
I didn't
it's
live
not-
here 15 years ago.
let's not get into an art,
I had no
I'm-
desire to check
let me
the
finish what I'm saying, Ivan, I'm not elevating this, I'm having a very respectful, cordial conversation, I'm taking ownership of the fact that ultimately the buck stops with me, so my rush is not your problem. I'm in agreement with that, my rush is not your problem, so.
Well, we wanna help you.
Right, so I've spoken with John, and John doesn't speak for you, nor do I speak for the town board collectively, but I do think can be some sort of resolution, but we do need to find something for safety and quality of life for Smith Street.
Absolutely.
And does that mean that it can't be, for example, I brought up, and you have a valid point, the fire department out in Chappaqua off of 120. Can it be, I brought up the idea of sort of off of Allen Place in Washington Avenue. I mean, there's a lot of things to do, but I'm hesitant, despite the idea that I'm open to conversation, I am hesitant to just go and take out this hill. And when we have not had the opportunity to work together, and I am comfortable saying that I think we can come to an agreement, and if we can't, then we'll cross that bridge. And if that means that we're gonna get mired in an inability to get anything done because of a disagreement that I passionately disagree with you about, then we'll cross that bridge. But as it stands now, I'm in agreement with Hala, that I'm not so quick to jump and chop down the cherry tree. There's no such George Washington here. Chop down all those trees and cut off that hill, even if subjectively, it's and it's not part of my non-scientific environmental response, it's between the two parking lots. It's not some pristine area that is unique to some species. Now again, we're gonna mitigate this. We're not gonna just and you know, it's not like we're dealing with a Lorax and who speaks for the trees here. We're gonna do something that is gonna bring it back to make it
That's
acceptable.
what this process is designed to do.
So anyway, and some after that long spiel that I stared at you most of the time.
What's the process designed to do? Is it?
I'm in agreement that I'm agreeing with Holland, I'm not so prepared to say we should be knocking this down and usurping your power.
What's the, when you say the process designed to do it, you see, I'll be honest with you. The feeling I get, and I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, is like, we're gonna work with you, just stay away from the hill. But it seems to me that I think we could solve a lot more problems because we have two locations for a basketball court, and one we already decided is a preferable location, without knowing it involved a ERB, but we decided it's a preferable location for some very valid reasons.
That's fair.
And the other reason is that we need to increase the staging area for our construction, which is a more important reason right now, because we have to find a solution now. Like, we don't have the benefit of time. We need to find a solution now for that. Okay, so that's just a given, and if anybody says we shouldn't use that area, they need to come up with another option, because we don't have the luxury of time. We need to find another option to put this smelly dirt. So the point is, if you say that what this process is designed to do, if the process is designed to say, mitigate it, like you're gonna use that area, but let's work together to mitigate it, then that's fantastic, because then it's gonna solve a lot of problems that we have to solve. If the process is stay away from our hill and work around it, well then it's not really, we're left with a lot of policy issues that we have to still address, that we have, I mean, they have to be addressed. We have to find a spot for this smelly soil. It's that simple. The basketball court is not the most important thing right now.
And
The
yet,
most
it's the
important thing.
subject of the resolution, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. In fact, it's even higher up on this work session because we knew you guys were coming. But that's why I think these things need to be combined. And it doesn't matter, quite honestly, if this was first or last, or no matter what the title of the resolution is. Here's the thing. We need to find a location for the smelly soil. There's nothing that you're gonna say or I'm gonna say that's gonna change that. We need to find a spot for the smelly soil, and we need to do it ASAP.
I had a couple of thoughts on that topic, but I just wanna ask, before I go on to that topic, I just wanted to ask you a question. You know, if, and I realize that we moved along in the process in terms of the design without getting your input, but we are at a certain point, doesn't mean we think, but if between, let's just say now and January 15th, even if it might mean that you might have to meet several times with us to give us feedbacks or at least review the responses we give you, is that something that you think to expedite
We
the
do that
review?
all the time.
Yeah.
We do that for.
Part of our process.
We do that
To
for
see if we can
regular
come to a meeting of
residents.
a minds in a short time frame. Is
Yeah.
that something you think is a realistic
That's what we
option?
do. When our purpose is to enforce that section of the town code concerning the environmental laws. And when a project is proposed that violates those laws, they come before us and it begins a collaborative process where we try to figure out what is the best and least harmful way to achieve the goals that the group or person is trying to achieve, and to mitigate any damages that may happen along the way, and to make sure that the code that this town board wrote and empowered us to protect is respected along the way. What this resolution is seeking to do is to completely circumvent that process and say, we don't even wanna sit down. We don't even wanna look for a less intrusive alternative. We wanna make this decision without having to explain it to anybody or justify it to anybody or even look at it in the context of the environmental laws. And that, I think, when you talk about policy, Rob, I think that's a pretty dangerous policy to start.
Well,
And I'm
that's-
not sure that that's, I'm pretty sure it's not the policy you ran on in terms
Well,
of.
I'm pretty sure it's not also, if you look at the 9 standards that are in the resolution, you're free to paraphrase however you want it, but if you look at the standard, the policy that's in the standard, it's not that anybody is trying to usurp you or not take it seriously. It's that you have, the Environmental Review Board, as you reminded us a few times, it's a statutory charge, and we respect that. We have charges as well. We have the whole town to be responsible for, and it's not just one section of the statutes, it's the whole code. And then we also have other issues like quality of life that we have to worry about. So, again, and I understand what you're saying about this is 2 separate things on the agenda and basketball court is higher, I get that. But you see, my big thing right now is trying to figure out a space for the dirt, and I gotta tell you, I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, when ELQ wanted to take down that hill because that was the perfect spot to expand the staging area in the back, and they stopped because they found that as a wetland buffer, like, that's an area that we absolutely 100% need to consider, again. And until somebody comes up with an acceptable solution, now you may say, well, can we wait till January 15th? You know something, everybody around this table could decide that that's a great solution, let's wait till January 15th. Here's the problem, we have a contractor who says we need to find a location yesterday. Like, we vacated Smith Street, we did that Monday, okay? We need to find an alternate location ASAP.
So here's some of the ideas I had on the altercation, I'm sure I won't get beaten up on. But if, and I, these, I'm sure I will get beaten up on, so, okay. So, the playground as we know it now, we know that it's aging. And that we're coming into the deep winter for the next 3 months. So we're coming into, cold weather, snow, sleet, rain, so on and so forth. I'm not here often enough to see it, and we have the playground at Bell School, just up the road a little bit. So one of the
Different kind of
We
playground.
can't
No,
remove
no.
the playground.
But my question is, if we wanted to, one thing to do is to just take the playground down and use that as a staging area for the soil right there. It's very similar location, doesn't disrupt the hill. The second idea, which I know, again, will be unpopular, but, and then I didn't know Brian was gonna be here, is, the Hunt's Place has been remediated. And it has all of the appropriate, now has all the appropriate stuff to make sure things don't go down the drain the wrong way into
The
like this.
infrastructure.
Whatever, yeah, that's all the pipes and flaps and stuff. And I was wondering to a certain extent if we needed to stage soil for drying out, which is very similar to what they did there, take it in, take it out, approach Conifer about perhaps taking the soil and allowing it to drain there. Not that they would say yes, but I don't see any bulldozers.
It doesn't matter what I say, the DEC won't allow us to bring in dirty soil.
Oh, no, it's clean soil.
Yeah, that's a can of worms.
You would have to test it to prove that it was
Was
clean.
clean.
But I think,
So the
Honestly, I wouldn't have any problem, I'm not using the site until.
Fine, he gave his vision.
Do you have a third option?
I think the question is whether, I understand the fire up the hill might be just a little bit too far away from what
It's not
you
funny, it's also the smell, I mean, how those people live right around there.
yeah,
I-
so
I've
the
been-
playground, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, finish up.
No, I was just gonna address the playground because on at face value, because of its proximity, it may seem promising. The problem is that we already have a parking crunch at Town Hall. And in order for us to be able to use that for trucks coming in and drying and things like that, it would mean that we would take out that entire section of parking that we just can't do anymore. We can't lose any more parking at Town Hall, that's one of our problems. We have tax collections coming up, I know the board wants to talk about that, certainly end of December, January, and then again in April, so we're talking about,
A
4
lot of
months
people driving in,
a lot of people
especially with
driving in.
prepaying now.
And people use that playground all the
All
time.
the
It's
time.
good
And I have to
for,
tell you
it's
that
good
that
for
playground is
toddlers
used-
and.
Yeah, and they literally, they
Hayes
come
Bell.
from the library right across the street.
But it wasn't a bad idea.
No, it's,
No.
believe me, we've looked at it, but.
And
Thank
and
you.
even to a certain extent, if, I mean, I haven't even sort of driven through town to kind of evaluate some of the options, but right now, I don't even
Hugh and
think of.
Boswell have constantly.
They live there.
I mean, that's why they chose Smith Street, they didn't wanna use Smith Street, we didn't have any more spots.
When you referenced just moments ago that we didn't wanna, and one thing I disagree with, at least if I'm understanding you correctly, is that we didn't look at alternative sites. Are you referring for the removal of the soil or depositing of the soil, you're referring to the basketball court?
I didn't say that at all,
Or
but
maybe I misunderstood you, so.
absolutely, listen, I understand that you guys have a problem with respect to where the dirt needs to go. What I'm saying is that because you have identified an environmentally sensitive location as a possible answer to that problem, shouldn't be the end of that conversation, it should be the beginning of it.
For what, I'm a little confused, end of conversation for what?
Of where do we put the dirt? I get
Soil.
that that's.
So you're not talking about the basketball
soil,
court.
the soil, right, that, because that's, I understand that, that's what this is now gonna be about, right? This is now about where do we put the
Well,
stuff
it's a
that we
joint
took
conversation. It
from,
has to be.
from Smith Street. Well, the resolution doesn't say that, the resolution's all about the basketball court.
The resolution starts off by talking about zoning, and that's not really the issue at all, is it?
I'm the draftsman of the resolution. The resolution was intended to create some discussion points for tonight, not knowing, because you haven't had this discussion yet, not knowing where the discussion was gonna lead. So please don't put too much stock in this, it's really just a working draft.
Well, we're not planning on, are we planning on voting on this in
No,
in
no,
any?
it's a discussion, it's, we're
So
starting the
I just
discussion.
wanna
No,
also
I
be
mean in the
clear,
next week.
just to be clear,
We have to figure out a location for the soil, we could wind up voting on it in the next week or two. We have to figure out a location for the soil. The basketball court is not a huge urgency, but we have to figure out a location for the soil within the next week or two.
Alright.
That is
Well-
for sure.
On the issue of the draft, let me just point out that it is a draft and it's got a lot of defects, a lot of things that would require correction, elaboration, even piddling typographic issues that muddy the understanding of what's been written. So it needs work.
Is the next
there's
version
no-
of the
no offense.
resolution, is the
That's why we're
next
here.
version of the
Yeah.
resolution gonna talk about utilizing the hill for the soil issue? Or are you going to continue to talk about it in the context of the basketball court?
I'm gonna take my direction from the town board in discussion tonight and try to capture it in the next draft.
But I
if
think, correct me if I'm
That's what the board tells me
wrong,
to do.
Ed, that you kind of drafted this before we knew about the issue with the soil. This was before
No,
we
it's
got
a-
the complaint
it
from.
makes
It is-
passing
there's a
mention.
bullet in
mentions
it, yeah, yeah.
Well, you may have changed it, but the initial conversation about this was about the basketball court.
Yes.
But that's kind of, we realize that's down the road, that the soil is the more pressing issue.
And it really, because of Monday with Smith Street, that's where
Right,
it
when
came from, so.
when we appeared for the ERB on Monday night, it was Wednesday morning that there was big trucks making deliveries with kids at the bus stop that, and by the way, they had complained already about the staging area and the danger to the kids, but it wasn't until we actually had trucks. And then, by the way, we had Kaz, our project manager for Boswell, come to our town board meeting, and even though we had addressed it with him via emails and over the phone, we basically told him in a public meeting, you cannot have this happen. And he essentially said, we know, but you gotta understand these trucks, I cannot guarantee you that's not gonna happen again. These trucks come from a great distance,
So you
and we have.
fix that.
I met with Kaz
We fixed the
and Jill
Smith Street
on
problem,
Friday.
we have it
But
replaced.
now you need a place to put
So,
the
and in our
materials.
situation, and maybe you guys
Exactly.
have some ideas, but what they need is they need about 300 square feet where they can put soil on pervious surface, so that it can drain. Now, if it's
Right.
dry and they take it out, they can put it in a truck, but if it's wet and they take it out, they need to put it on a pervious surface to drain before they can put it in the truck and haul it away.
Right, cause downtown is a swamp, so.
And by the way, this hill, you know, just
It is, I mean,
It
this hill,
certainly is.
this hill, it's been my understanding that this hill was created basically when they created the town hall parking lot, and they just basically dumped a bunch of rocks in a location in dirt, and then they had some trees that grew out of it. I mean, this hill sits between two parking lots. You know, I know it's in a wetland buffer, because there's a stream there. This whole parking lot and half the rec field is in a wetland buffer. This hill is basically sitting between two parking lots.
Exactly. And Rob, I don't think you could have illustrated my point better as to why you need the perspective of the Environmental Review Board to talk about it, because all you see is a pile of rocks between two parking lots. And that's the beginning and the end of the perspective that you can bring to this discussion. But
Well-
this is what we do, and this is what we're charged with doing.
Did you
You
see,
understand?
you see the trucks in the back of town hall that we have, and you see the soil and dirt and all the other gravel that's already being stored back there? It's a staging area, so what I see is actually a huge staging area for construction, and I see this hill that could be used to expand the construction staging area. And I see members of the ERB that are committed to the environment, and I would love to work with them to figure out a way to replace whatever purpose that hill is serving in another location. In other words, mitigation. Not to say let's work together to avoid the hill. Quite honestly, we can figure that stuff out ourselves, like alternate locations for basketball court. We don't necessarily need, we have our rec commission who can guide us on where the basketball court should go. We don't necessarily need you guys to do that. What we need you guys to do is to figure out how to mitigate the loss of a wetland buffer.
Alright, but that's conclusory, that does not fully examine.
It's uninformed.
Yeah, and that's why you should be talking with us. I thought we had started this conversation when we met together.
And if you wanna work with us, the way to do it is
We're
not to
here.
pass a resolution kicking us out of the process so that you don't have to talk to us.
No, well, we wouldn't necessarily be kicking you out of the process. For example, like here's a suggestion. We use the hill, and then if it turns out that we find a better location for the basketball court, we restore it. But the fact is that, you see, I know I'm talking about, you're focused on the basketball court at, top of the agenda, I get it. But I'm
That's your
I'm
resolution.
focused, right, exactly, I heard you said that a number of times. But I'm focusing on an imminent problem that we as a town board have to solve, and we will solve it, because we don't have a choice. And that's where to put this dirt. And I'll be honest with you, this dirt, this smelly dirt, should go in the back of town hall, next to the other dirt, next to the bulldozers, because it's proved to be a perfect staging area for the construction. And we need to make it as big as possible while minimizing loss of parking spots, because this is still a town hall, and even though we're using half of it as a staging area, we also need to use it as a town hall with parking.
So what you're talking about is balancing. You're talking about the various competing needs.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, and they all need to be considered and decisions need to be made. But what you're saying, there's parking and there's the needs of the local residents and there's the environment. And what you're trying to do with this resolution is to remove any informed voice concerning the environment from the discussion and do the balancing without having to listen to that background noise.
I might point out that once you hit the delete button here, as you're proposing to do, it's very hard to undo it and bring back the trees and bring back that visual barrier, which preserves some of the feel of the downtown that is not an urban environment. We don't want to create that, do we?
Once that hill is gone, it's
It's going forever.
So that's basically, I think you're supporting my point as well. It seems almost like you're saying, work with us, you're not touching the hill, but we want you to work with us. And that doesn't sound like, you're basically guarding the hill, but you're saying work with us.
In all fairness, may I
You're
say
assuming that
something?
we've made absolutely.
What
certainly
I really
sounds like
feel
you
like
have.
is, we haven't even started the
Thank you,
conversation.
that's
And
what I'm
that's
saying.
really the part that's
Yes,
missing in all of this.
To play devil's advocate, to take Rob's point, I was at that meeting, and while there was certainly personality
Let's see how you're
issues
gonna phrase this. Go ahead.
and personality issues and there was some conflict,
I tried to fix that.
I raised my hand, I was trying.
Yeah.
That aside, I got the impression that really under no circumstance, and maybe I'm wrong, would the ERB ever support, and maybe I'm wrong again, that the hill could be removed. That was my understanding, whether you said it or not, that was my view.
Bill, why don't you speak to that?
So, and we discussed a lot about alternate locations, and Brian mentioned, Center Street, the earth there is too wet. We discussed Gedney being too far out of the way, and one of the things that I have repeated almost as a mantra, not to fear Chapel Crossing, but trying to see how we can best protect and make our downtown much more desirable, and driving traffic here, not vehicular traffic necessarily, but people traffic, and provide this inclusive playground and provide an area where between, again, the library, Bell, the playground, the rec field, the basketball court, town hall, the train station, give reason people to come down here. Your responsibility as the ERB is not whether or not it's a economically better place to be, or a prettier place to be, or a place that will offset Chapel Crossing and help drive people down. That's your job, and that's fine. Our job as a town board, though, is to look holistically at environment, at economic, at vehicular and pedestrian traffic, a bunch of different factors. So we have competing end game values, even if they're tied together.
I think we're looking for a balancing of interests, just as you are.
When people come to us with their projects, they're not projects that we have an inherent interest in. These are people who are putting in swimming pools or realigning their driveways or whatever. It's not, oh, well, it'd be better for the environment if you didn't, get out. That would make our job really easy and really silly. What we do is we understand and work with the needs and interests of the people who are coming before us, and we try to find the least intrusive way to meet those needs and interests. So, you know, Rob, I know you'd very much like to determine right here and now if the Hill is the place or is not the place. The very problem is that that determination can't be made without first examining the possible alternatives and seeing, because that's what we do. And yes, there's mitigation. Mitigation is more of like a last resort thing, because once you chop it down and take it away, you can't bring it back, so we try to do something to mitigate the damage that we've done. But first, we bring our creativity to bear to try to figure out, is there a way that we can avoid the damage or lessen the damage in the first place? That's what we want to do, that's what we wanted to do with you, what we expected to do with you, and why we were very surprised to see this attempt to remove our voice and our authority from the process.
Well, maybe it was because I got the impression also that you guys were like hands off the Hill at the meeting, and apparently Jeremy did too, and quite honestly, I'm getting that same impression tonight.
No,
But
that's not
we do,
true.
well, no,
It isn't.
I understand, it may not be true, but that's the impression that I'm getting. And all I'm saying is, I appreciate your statutory charge, and we do appreciate it, and we have real issues to deal with, and the basketball court, it should not have been the top thing on the agenda. Finding the alternative location for the staging area should have been higher, because that is more of a pressing concern right now. And we need to make a decision about that within the next week or two. We don't have a choice on that front. It's that simple.
We have a temporary problem that we're looking to resolve, and you want to do something that is not temporary, and you're not willing to look at, are there better ways in this balancing of interest protocol to do that job? And I think that's what we need to look for. And it's an iterative process, and I thought we had started to talk. And now we're abrogating that process.
Well,
No,
not-
I don't think the board has made a decision about that. I think what you have is some people with very strong viewpoints one way, and other people who maybe have slightly different viewpoints another way. I don't think a final decision has
Yeah, the
been
purpose
made.
of this is to have a public forum
But I have a
conversation,
question for
otherwise
Ed.
everyone just.
And again, maybe I'm just really simple again, keeping it like really simple. This is all, I think when they raised the fact that this resolution is all tied to the basketball court. But in effect, from listening to this conversation, the underlying rationale to do this is not the basketball court itself, since there is time for that process. The underlying reason for doing this is related to the streetscape project and finding the space. So does that make this, on the face of it, arbitrary and capricious?
No, and
Or is it
and the,
inaccurate, or does it not reflect the intent of, no, I'm serious, I mean, if someone were to.
But I think if you look at the resolution, there are two things that, at least the effort was to bring two things forward. One was the basketball court and the idea that we needed the space for that project.
And that's why they
the other
originally
is,
approached the ARB.
the other is,
And let me just interject for 1 second, Ben, I'm sorry. And the reason we found out that the hill was actually in the wetland buffer was when we were gonna use that space for the staging area, but go ahead.
yeah, it really is in, it really is in 3A and 3B. And 3A talks about the basketball court and all the reasons, and Jeremy summarized them earlier, why it's important to have the playground and the basketball court
Yeah.
located where the board has chosen to locate
So
it.
3B is where you
And B.
refer the thing, but it still puts the emphasis on the basketball court, but from the conversation.
But that's why we're here, you know, because the urgency, you know, we.
Again, I mean,
3A
it's
has
like
7
a.
subpoints, 3B is an aside.
But what's the point, we can change the resolution.
That's the problem.
This is not a
that-
permanent
That's why
document,
it's a
this is a draft, it says draft on it. If you're gonna hang your hat on the fact that we have a draft here and the order of this work session thing, I think you're gonna need to come up with better arguments, because
I haven't
this
made
is
it. It's
this is a
nothing to do with the
draft,
order of the
and
work
we're gonna
session.
we're gonna revise this based on the discussion that we're having here tonight.
Which is the first discussion that the board has had as a group, where they've had an opportunity to deliberate and get input from you and others.
The point
So, but
that
I
the
guess,
board members
I guess
make-
to a certain extent, what I'm trying to understand is, I don't wanna make a tax bill, alright? By throwing a whole bunch of stuff, I'm talking about
I
if
heard
what
you
we,
said, oh, I'm sorry, I wanna make a,
tax bill, a tax, like revise, overhaul our tax code. I'm making a reference to the mashugana that is that. What I'm talking about is if we have a clear purpose for doing this, should this not be a little more direct?
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, I wanted to have a relatively light touch in terms of the content, because I wanted to take my direction from the board. I didn't wanna be out front and, so yes, the basketball court wound up ahead of the
I mean-
restage in 3, but
I'm wondering why we're talking about redrafting the resolution.
I'm sorry, Ed, our
I-
attorney was talking, Ivy, I'm sorry, you can't, our attorney was in the middle of saying something.
But we'll get
I
back
was-
to you in just one second.
I was done.
Go ahead.
Well, look, it was real, the resolution, the draft is really just so that the board had an opportunity to have something in front of them to
To
talk
react
about.
to.
Yeah.
A framework for the discussion,
Okay.
that's it. And
Okay.
the board asked me to do this, so
Okay.
I did it.
yeah, we discussed, listen, make no mistake, we discussed that as, to get it out publicly, to have a conversation about it, yes.
Well,
So you might ask, is this the best way to accomplish the overall goals that we're trying to achieve here? And maybe it's not, maybe there are better ways to go about this.
Or maybe it is, I mean, obviously, that's why we're having this discussion.
Well, but so, can I ask my question now, which is, why are we talking about revising a draft resolution? I mean, really, I think the question is, should you be revising the resolution, or should you actually be engaging these folks in the process? But they are, by the town code, meant to be.
Well, Ivy, I guess the point is that we are working with them, and I guess you just
This
spelled that, you
resolution's
just
actually
spelled,
not
you
going
just
to work
you just
with
spelled out the two choices.
Right.
We know the two choices, right? The two choices are that we have a resolution where we take action that we think satisfies the requirements to take the action because it's in the best interest of the community, solving a lot of different issues that we have to address. Or we work with the ERB to basically
To do the same thing.
to basically, in the next 2 weeks, to find a staging area. I mean, I don't know why this isn't getting more play among this town board. I mean, we have a pressing problem. We have to find an area to put smelly dirt, okay? I don't know why we are not giving this a little more urgency. And we have this basketball court which doesn't quite need the urgency, okay? But we have to solve both those problems, one quicker than the other. That's a fact. So if this resolution needs to be changed, then we'll change it. But we have to solve two problems, and one has to be solved very quickly.
What I'm hearing,
6 heads are better than 2 or 3.
what I'm hearing is a little
Maybe
bit of squaring
sometimes.
off on the resolution and the language of the
Sometimes.
resolution.
But I
I'm not sure that-
think Ivy was bringing up the fundamental
I'm not sure
principle,
that
right.
discussion has been productive or will be productive. What I've also heard a little bit, that at least some efforts at, was what is each side willing to do? How can we work collaboratively together in a very short timeline? So we talked a little bit about mitigation, and we heard the idea that once you tear it down, it's really hard to restore it the way it was. But maybe that's where we should spend a little time talking. Maybe that if your board, and I understand you're just 2 members, but if you think that your board could get to a place where taking down the hill would be something you take a hard look at, and the discussion would turn to, okay, what are we gonna do to replace it? What are we gonna do to put back that visual and that environmental buffer between the two?
Are you suggesting that we start from a point that concludes
No,
that this is the location?
No, I think that if is there an,
'Cause that's
I
what
guess the
I'm
real
hearing.
question is there an openness?
Of course,
But your
there's
point-
always an
Of
opening.
course, but we're not getting that vibe, nobody
Not
is.
getting that vibe at all.
Well,
Nobody's getting the vibe, Ivan, I'm sorry, we're not
There's
getting the
not
vibe.
2 sides here, there's one side, and it's for the whole town.
Gentlemen,
know
what I'm-
the
what I'm-
hotel.
what I'm
We're aware of
hearing
that.
though, what I'm hearing
Work
though
together on
is that there was a really genuine effort to find alternate locations for this staging area. And I'm not here, by that look, I don't, you're not taking that at face value,
Well,
but.
nobody told us, I mean, we didn't even know this was about the staging area.
But I think we could assure you in relatively short order, and I think Adam could probably speak to this
Yeah, I
very
mean,
well.
we looked at every, we spoke to many private property owners in town, they weren't interested, we looked at every town-owned property, including using the rec field and different things, and it's just not viable, so, I mean, that's,
And the rec
that's how we
field's
got
not
to-
viable because of the
that-
damage?
Because of the damage and will destroy the turf. I spoke to
But
Kaz
turf
about
can
it.
be put
Some of
back.
the, honestly, some of these options are a little bit, I mean, talking about, in all due respect, talking about taking down a playground to use that
So,
over
Adam,
this
yes.
hill.
could you do me
I
a
mean,
favor?
honestly, it's like, I think we're entering
Could
the
you
realm of
send
like-
me the list of options that were explored?
we're not taking it down yet.
I know, but
We're not taking
just
it down
shoot an email,
until
like when you get a
the whole
chance.
downtown is done. That's gonna be a year from now, we're not doing any of that, we're gonna remove a playground to put dirty soil because we don't wanna disturb a hill that we could actually use as a staging area and the preferred location for a basketball court? That basically serves,
When you first mentioned this to the environmental review board,
That was
and when,
Hollis' suggestion.
and when you first came before
What?
us, which was
No,
the one
playground.
meeting that you attended a couple of weeks ago, nobody made any mention of anything concerning a staging area or smelly dirt or any of that. That- I
Because it
understand-
happened 2 days
I understand
later.
that happened 2 days
It
later,
was-
but even then, the position that we were presented with was, look, if you're willing to take down the hill and talk mitigation, then we'll stay and talk. Unless you're willing to accept
That
that
wasn't the
as a
position.
preconceived
Ivan, that was, you know
determination.
that wasn't the
I
position.
was there, Rob.
That wasn't the
No, with
position,
all
Ivan,
respect, I was
Ivan, we
there
spent,
too.
we
I'm
spent
sorry to
90 minutes
report
of we spent 90% of the time talking about why the basketball court should be at Gedney. Okay, that's what the meeting, that was the meeting was about. We spent the majority of time not even getting to town hall. We didn't really talk about the hill, we spent a very little amount of time talking about town hall and the hill. We talked about explaining the history of the basketball court and why we feel it should be in
All of that
downtown
was talked
Chappaqua
about.
at town hall.
Yes.
We spent an inordinate
And-
amount of time talking about why it should be at Gedney or
What were
other
the
places.
circumstances
But
under
Adam,
which you were
if I
willing
have
to
to listen
continue the
to the whole
conversation, Rob?
case.
Honestly.
I know,
Well,
I just
here's
made a
the
list.
thing,
Well,
Ivan.
I'll say, I've had a chance.
Well, you left in the middle, but maybe
That's
you
my
can give us
to-do
the
list.
Well, I
answer.
think
He
I
left
left,
at the very
I
end.
left at the end,
Yeah.
but, there did not seem to be any interest to follow up with the design that removed the hill at all. That said,
Without
I can-
exploring other
hold
options.
on, let me finish. That said, we addressed other options, even at every option, but we discussed again Center Street and Gedney, and I know I explained why those weren't options, Brian explained why those weren't options, and why we thought that location right here was the best option. Subsequent to that, and I don't recall if we discussed it there, but Rob and I had a conversation and about, well, if in fact it's less damage and we can put it on the playground, pardon me, if we can build this on the blacktop, sort of where it is now, if parking isn't decreased or if there's no other collateral issues, and we can preserve the hill, then that may be the right way to go. Subsequent to that, I understand, I haven't seen anything in writing, I think Bob, is it from Bob Cioli? That I've been advised that the parking that we thought we would get, we wouldn't get based on this design. I think you catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar, the whole scheme of life. So I have no interest in saying to you no, because potentially I can. Just because you can do something doesn't make it right. I'll restate, I am not so quick to take down that hill and I use the term usurp your power to do so, when there might be alternatives. It's just that simple. But that being said too, I hope that we can work together because, and this is not a threat by any way, I'm just saying, just trying to come into a meeting of the minds, because I don't think you'll convince me otherwise that Gedney, Center Street, or anywhere else is the right answer.
Because this was the very first we had heard of it.
Correct.
Our initial, breadth of options for alternatives was, well, what about this, what about that? We had no.
You know something, I think
Yeah,
it's
that
totally
makes
fair
sense.
because recently Rob was kind enough to share with us some documents that we had not necessarily seen before, but were in some ways the basis of this decision making. And
By the rec commission.
yeah, and they were actually very, very thorough. So what I was thinking that perhaps, in the process of just making it digestible, of course, all the documents can be made to you, but there may be a little bit of history that goes behind it, because the fact that this needed to go in front of the ERB, maybe we should have known beforehand, but we didn't know, and so almost like how when people come in and they're sort of latched onto a concept, rather than when it's just an idea, it was a little bit more formed, I think, than you were expecting to see. So I think there's probably bringing you up to the same level that history that we have had would help, I think, make the ability for people to have a more informed and intelligent discussion about the balancing of the various interests of town. And so I'm hoping that if, I can't speak for how the rest of the board is gonna vote, but I'm with Jeremy in that perhaps this is the better way for us to approach and to work together, not necessarily, end up.
That's why we volunteer our time.
But nobody, we appreciate you volunteering, but we still have the problem of, and like Jeremy alluded to, we 100%, we were talking about it, and we took a train together, and we both agreed that if we can avoid, taking down the hill, it'd be better. And then we sent emails saying we need a realistic loss of parking spots, because one of the charts that we were given, it looked like we were only losing 3 or something,
It looked like we were gaining 3
right, but then
on the
we
other.
were told that it's not realistic. It also wasn't so great with cars, because the fact is, with the location we preserved the hill, we got parking sort of behind the basketball court, which
I had an idea of
is
that.
not, it was better, we thought better maybe to push the basketball court off and not have any cars around it, but putting that aside, we were still willing to entertain it. And then the issue with Smith Street came up. This all happened on Tuesday after we met with you guys, and then the issue with Smith Street came up. So I know it's a separate thing on the agenda, and I understand what the resolution
And it
says,
really is, because-
but this is an issue at Smith Street and it can't be
I
denied. I
was on
understand it's
that email.
convenient too, I get it,
Rob,
but the fact
Rob,
is, it's an
construction-
issue.
Rob, the construction it's a freight train going through downtown, and it's gotta get done. I mean, we can't,
No, that's-
and so, we can't, and so we're in this position, and we have to make it happen. I don't really know what choice,
Before Smith Street, we were actually talking seriously about trying to avoid disrupting this hill. And the Smith Street is something that I know I keep on harping on it, but it's not something that we can just put aside. Whether it's highlighted in the resolution right now or not, whether it's next to this on the agenda or not, we have this problem, we have to figure out where to
Got
put
it,
this smelly
got it.
dirt.
So the question then is, where do you put it? And you have one potential location which is environmentally sensitive and which doing this temporary fix would cause a permanent situation. So are there others? Maybe there aren't. Maybe there
haven't
really
found them yet. We
legitimately
haven't
is
found
no
them yet.
other place that is a reasonable location for the smelly dirt. I get it, if that's true, but it's a question that needs to be asked and explored before you take an action that is serious and runs roughshod over the town code.
Rest
So, you know
assured,
what
we've
might
been
be
studying it for
helpful,
months.
might be helpful?
But you said it just came
No,
up
no, no.
10 days ago.
Let me just
Wait,
finish
wait.
one more point, please. It came up, again, we learned about this wetland buffer from this hill when we were going to use that area as a staging area. When ELQ told us that we can't use it, or when Steve Cohen pointed out that it's a wetland buffer and we can't take down that hill, we used Smith Street. Once the incident happened on Smith Street on Wednesday morning and we decided we must vacate Smith Street, that's when the issue became an issue again. We had solved the problem. We did solve the problem when we started using Smith Street. But now we can't use Smith Street, we won't use Smith Street. So now the issue is on a table again.
Right,
So
to-
Adam, can you let us know, and maybe all of us, everywhere that was looked at?
I'll speak to
'cause
Kaz in the morning with me
From what I'm
and
hearing
Kaz,
from
yeah.
you and Kaz, that there really is no other location, that's the only identifiable location after looking everywhere.
That's my
And by the way,
That's your understanding.
Jeremy has raised some issues that were actually not in wetland buffers, they were actually wetland areas.
Right, the
Like-
areas on either side, that's what I was gonna say, the area on either side of Washington Avenue where the parking lot exits, those two areas there, they're pretty large and they're wooded, and they're actual wetlands.
One of the things that I thought, just whether obviously it may not come to fruition, was if we were exploring opening up to two-way traffic, Allen and Washington Avenue to help with egress outside, coming to the train station, but turns out that's wetlands.
I
It's
have-
also-
I have some ideas on that one.
And it's also not as simple as is it on a wetland, is it in the buffer? There's an analysis that has to do with the quality of the use and the area that we go through. That's part of what we do and why we meet with the town environmental coordinator, so that we can do that balancing test. Not all things that violate the town code are created equal from an environmental
We
perspective.
consult, that's how we knew it was a wetland, is we asked Steve for the maps and we identified it with him. We did this in
Well, what Ivan is
consultation.
saying is
Ivan-
because it's a wetland doesn't.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's
So,
off the table.
taking that statement, can you explain to maybe the board members who were not at the meeting with the ERB, cause it was just
Rob,
the two of you, cause three of us
Jill.
can't
And
be,
Jill.
and Jill, but I mean
Brian,
board members,
and
cause
Mike.
three of us can't be at a meeting together. What the significance is of this hill, as opposed to taking your comment that some are more important than others, and can you explain to me why? Because me, just as a layperson looking at it, I look at it and say it's a little, I wouldn't even call it a hill. To me, it looks like a mound of dirt in between two parking lots. I don't understand why it's so
What's
important.
valuable about that site? Why is
Yes.
it worth protecting and why is it worth caring about what we use that site for? I understand. Bill, what do you?
Well, it provides some things that would be irretrievably lost if we removed it. There is a visual screen between some of the downtown areas, the parking lot and some of the other downtown use areas. There is it creates a buffer as well as a screen, and it's actually a habitat. And I think
What?
Jeremy and Rob, you
Yeah, there was a video with
you saw
birds.
that video, it's a bird habitat.
Basically, what they did is they staged about 100,000 parakeets.
Yeah.
And it was like.
They actually edited in, they edited in.
I don't know if they were
Did you
real.
see the release of the
I haven't seen the original video, but it
They
was.
sliced it in.
We
It was quite a,
imported them
display.
and we put them in the trees.
It was quite a
But they
display.
talk, no, we're saying you added the music day after the video, that's what it said.
But what it says is that this is a little bit of the Chappaqua environment that makes Chappaqua what it is. It's like a quality of life in our town that we would be eliminating. So that's another little piece.
It's, it's, the idea, as I understand it, is to build a downtown recreational facility, right? And it's going to involve the playground and the rec field and the gazebo.
Maybe a bridge coming over the rec field, so that's.
Yeah, we
all of- we get all-
suggested
Tie it all
that too.
together.
Yeah, there's
We-
a lot of things that.
It seems to us in our very preliminary discussions that consistent with that would be that it isn't a flat level straight shot to a commuter parking lot, but that recreation area is surrounded by this kind of wooded, naturalistic, both visual and audible buffer between that and what is, Metro North and the Metro North station. Oftentimes, when we go through this process with applicants, the solutions that we come up with together, the applicants are much happier with than the one they came to the table with. That's the value we add, that's why we do what we do. We look at it from different perspectives and try to value what you guys say you value, right? Because the town code, which embodies this, the environmental laws, as well as repeating them in the, the plan, that you
Comp
guys,
plan.
the comprehensive plan, talks about wanting to preserve that character. All we're saying is, let's look and see if that's possible. Why wouldn't you wanna have that discussion with us?
But you could also have your visual screen and your buffer zone without actually having the hill. That you, the buffers, those things you can do with trees and bushes and planting other things. I mean, nobody's
Maybe, that's part
nobody's
of the
taught,
discussion.
right, but that's actually a good discussion to have, but we still, there's two uses that we could use for the hill. One is an immediate use and one is a use down the road for the basketball court, but there's use.
Wait, you had a question?
But one benefit is right now
Well,
is that we could
actually
use it. I
similar
mean,
to this.
again, ELQ wanted to use this hill, this area for their staging area, and that's where we learned it was a wetland buffer. That's how we discovered it. We should have discovered it sooner, and if we did, we would have came to you sooner with the basketball court. But we discovered it because they wanted to use that area for the staging, and now we need additional area for the staging.
So let me ask a question.
Have we fully evaluated the other possibilities in the downtown area?
Yes.
I don't think we have.
Yes, we have.
Well, I think that's what Adam's gonna
You've
tell us.
concluded that you have, but we haven't seen.
No,
that's what
I
Adam
agree with you.
asked us to show
I
us.
do not know all the locations, that information has not
But-
been shared and there
sure.
has not been a discussion.
Let's take it, let's just assume, just for the sake of this discussion, that that's the only spot. Let's just take it that that's the only spot, and we know there are questions about it, but just assume, for the purposes of discussion, that's the only spot. If it was, for both the basketball court and the dirt, the smelly dirt, could you see, as members of the ERB, a way to come to a meeting of the minds to mitigate the buffer issue, the sound issue, everything else, and even the habitat for birds? Could you see a way, assuming that it has to be there, that we could make that work? Do you think? I'm not telling you to draw it now, but, or is it absolutely impossible?
No, if that were the only possibility, and there was incontrovertible evidence that there are no other alternatives possible,
What are you gonna do?
what else are you gonna do?
If you need to do it.
I mean, what kind of a question is that?
Like wetlands are
I think
paved
she's asking about
over
mitigations, I
all
think
the
she's
time.
asking
Well,
about
here's the
mitigations.
thing.
I absolutely
Yeah.
think we need to hear
Yeah.
from Adam, and Adam's gonna get us a list of everywhere we looked. But assuming he does that and we all look at it and go, you're right, that's the only space. Then my question is, can we figure out what we can do?
Then we would wanna be
To
part of the
mitigate-
discussion to try to
Yeah,
do
we-
it in the way that caused the least damage and gets mitigated in the most effective way possible.
We would have an interactive
And it's
discussion.
really important for everybody to understand that that discussion cannot precede the discussion of, are there other sites? Because if there are, that's the better solution than trying to mitigate the damage that was caused because you didn't have the first discussion to begin with.
Okay, but, and then to add on to that, I agree with you. If we have, forget the basketball court for a minute, if we have an immediate need to put this dirt somewhere, we have to then come up with answers to all of that, from what I understand, within the next week.
Well,
Okay, are there other?
Both to understand if there are other places and
Doing it right now. Jill's
if there are
texting me.
other places
Doing it right now.
and
Yeah, I asked him.
if there aren't, how we can mitigate
Even though
that
it's Christmas,
within
well, it's
a
nobody's working.
really, maybe it's not a week, maybe it's two, but within a very short time.
No,
Well,
let's
actually,
take a
it's
serious look
within
at
a
it.
week. We're
Then
doing our
we-
sewer work now. Sewer work is scheduled, they're excavating 12 feet down in order to lay the sewer pipes. So the dirt has to go someplace,
Right.
and
And we can't put it on Smith.
But how long
No
does
one
their
wants to put that
process take, right?
Well, that's what I'm
So if
asking.
they're able to expedite their process.
That's what I'm
then they can
asking.
solve this
Well, that's what I'm saying, a
shortage.
middle of January decision, is that something that you guys could live with?
If-
I don't know if we
We're
can.
not,
I don't know.
the decision isn't
At
the
least to know where
problem so
we
much
are
as
relative to each other.
it's just
If we gave all
about,
you
it's just
equal-
about everybody kind of digging in
Yeah.
and working toward the same end.
Yeah,
Which is there another location? Because if there is, that would be better. And if there isn't another
Obviously.
location,
Obviously,
then we move on to
We,
the next
but
one.
again, this, you know, again, this is
So
where
it
we
seems kind
know
of
that-
easy at this point, to me. It seems first we have to get a list and figure out, is there another place? And we have to do that very expeditiously. And two, if there is, then great, problem solved.
We wanna
And
do
if
some
there
site
isn't,
inspections.
problem solved, assuming that's not an environmental issue, the other place.
So-
But then step two is if there isn't another place, then we
Then
have
we
to
have to
figure
find a
out
different
within a
solution.
week how we can mitigate this.
Okay, and let me point out
Right?
that we
Well-
have, between now and your date, we have two scheduled sessions.
That's not the date.
Right, you know,
January 15th,
saying,
not the date.
throwing out a date, it
It's
doesn't.
gotta be in
It's
the-
gonna be before January 15th. It's gonna be before January 15th, I'm sorry, I know she threw out that date, but we need to do this ASAP.
Not for the
That's
basketball
saying-
court.
Not for the basketball court.
We could, and we have done this in the past for all sorts of projects. We could
Fast track
convene
it.
Yeah, we hold special
an
meetings, we do
extra
this.
meeting. We do this all the time.
Okay.
We
Well-
haven't talked
So then, so when,
about
well,
that
Adam's giving us the
possibility.
list, you guys
Okay.
can also, if you have any ideas, maybe we've explored them already as well. So we, when I say we,
I can
we
tell
looked
you
at
what
them,
they
let's
are.
try
I
to.
can tell you what they are too.
let's do them.
Oh,
Here's another idea, it's a little wacky. What would
Wacky, they take
happen?
it on the playground?
Everyone
No,
thinks
what,
it's a
what would
$5
happen
bucket for a
is,
house.
given the fact, if, for Smith Street, like, let's just say, okay, the Smith Street location is different, and yes, the quality of their life, like a lot of the people who live downtown, has been disturbed because of all the construction. But what happened if Joan Corwin had a small bus and picked all the kids up at their house and took them to school?
If it's more than that, it's the dust and the noise.
By the
We're not putting- we're not
library,
putting
there's
that
a
stuff
big
there.
pedestrian area.
And we also been put on notice, it's
That's
a
true.
liability
Can't
issue,
stand
it's not an option.
If we've
to be
been
honest
put
with
on notice, it's a.
No, but if we have the kids picked up, so they don't have to do
Is it,
anything but their front
is it
door.
necessary that the location be pervious surface? I know that's preferred, but is it necessary?
I don't know
What
the
would
answer.
happen if we found an impervious surface, which would necessarily cause less damage, because we're talking about a paved area, as a staging area for this?
I think it would be fine if it had the
I don't
ability
know,
to drain
where's
as
the
drain.
water going?
I think they actually
Down
prefer the
there.
impervious surface, the only reason they're using the
I
back parking lot was because we actually planned on having to repave it anyway when we did the basketball court, cause again, that's when we were all in the basketball court.
So that may
going there
open
a
up
little-
other
That might open up
opportunities.
other-
They can talk about the other
Oh,
locations
how
we've
about
examined.
the back part of the parking lot?
It's already
It's
full.
already full.
The commuter lot?
And there's also wetlands there too, and they want it close to the equipment.
Is it possible that you'd lose some parking spaces?
You'd have to get there, you'd have to,
Temporarily, but
you'd have to get people, you're gonna drive people into downtown, go into Allen, to get to that back of the parking lot, or unless you're gonna have them go out the back way on Washington Avenue, I mean,
No,
that's,
that's.
you could have nightmares doing
Big
that.
trucks
That's not
going
the
through the
proposal.
parking lot.
Alright, let's get the list, cause we have a lot to talk about
Yeah,
today.
and Dr. Fleck, we don't have the luxury of losing parking spots. We actually have people call us up sometimes
I think
complaining
there
that
are
there's
some
no parking
creative
spots.
ways to recover those parking spots.
I wish I knew.
We ought to look at that.
They
We
did,
did.
well, we expanded,
Years.
we created about 15 new parking spots last summer when we repaved the back, the skating
take a
court.
break. I'm gonna
We
let you
tried to
deal with
create
the
as many
stickers.
parking spots as possible because we have a shortage, not to mention it's an income generator for us. For every additional parking spot we create, we can
Yeah.
sell another parking pass. We did it, we tried to maximize it.
Let me just throw out something else that occurred to me. One of the big needs for parking is for evening sessions of the court.
Yeah, there's an edge, right?
And that can utilize space in our parking
Community lot,
area a
sure.
little, a
Very
little
good.
further north, that would not be used at that time. And one of the things that we were suggesting before was that bridge so that people could have easy access, and not only to the town hall, but that bridge would also create some access to the ball fields across the street. So that's a win-win situation.
We do want more connectivity with the commuter lot to make it seem like it's not one parking lot, but basically it's,
Let me
you know,
suggest, if
there's
you
some
don't mind,
connectivity.
well, I think I think our issues are out, we haven't resolved them, but we certainly put them out there, so. You're gonna provide us with information, you guys are gonna do your homework as
Yep.
well to get us
Yeah,
some of
no
your
problem.
ideas.
So-
Nothing's being voted on, certainly now regardless, and let's continue working together because it behooves us to do so, period.
If we have that list to you tomorrow, how long do you think it'll take your board to look at it, digest it, come back to us with comments?
What other sponsors?
We can pass it around for the
But,
next couple
okay,
of
can-
days
can I
and get
just-
some feedback.
Just clarify,
Sure.
so properties that are town-owned property,
Right.
we can consider. For those that are private landowners, who we've asked and have said no, there's no really further discussion on it.
But we should put the private landowners on there as well, but have we offered to pay them rent?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay,
But
make them,
but
make
there,
them.
no,
Nobody-
no, no,
nobody
no,
wants
no,
your
but
spelling dirt.
let me just, no, just even for storage stuff. I mean, you know, we've tried to work something out with the church, they've got
Just indemnify it.
a splice of wetland that runs up the
Between the church and
and the library,
Oh, yeah,
okay,
that's
and
good.
they've offered that to Boswell for their storage. That's a operating wetland, that was, they will not give us their front hill. They've got the Strawberry Festival, it has to be completely restored in pristine condition before then.
How long will it need for the smelly dirt, this immediate need? How long?
3 months, I think.
Months.
How long is
At
this,
least
like
like 3 months.
like the winter pretty much?
Yeah,
Well,
till,
it
not
depends
till,
on the
April, January,
permeability of
February.
the,
Until
not
January,
for
February, I
the
thought it was
soils.
gonna be
Well, they're gonna start streetscape maybe March.
March, that's what I thought it was March.
Close to April, but
I mean, and by the way,
I don't know
you
where
guys, there's one area that we also considered, just so you know, it's where Con Ed is using, because Con Ed's gonna be done this month. And so when you exit Allen Place over there, there's a train station in the back, and then you take your left, so now you're going towards like the library. There's an area to the left there that actually Con Ed is using, and they're gonna be vacating that area. But we're
So-
using that already.
Yeah,
We
so we're
already have
gonna
that.
move we're gonna move our fleet there so
Right.
that ELQ can have more of the front area of the parking lot.
We really did, I mean, we'll share it with you, but we really did have,
yeah,
give us
this
a
is
lot
the
of.
kind of input
We didn't use
that,
Smith Street
you
lightly.
should share with us and.
We hear a lot of
So,
complaints.
my suggestion
Work
again is,
together on it.
because we have a lot on our agenda, I think
Sounds
the
good.
issue has been addressed and identified, and let's just work together now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Alright,
thank you for
good
doing
night.
this.
so much.
And thanks for all you do.
Next is Santa Pro, our OOP sticker, and
do not need the oops sticker.
But you want, Joe, you want to, maybe we should do something else what people are here for.
oh, I'm sorry, what are you here for? Farmers market agreement?
Well, what are you guys here for? Ed, you're here for the conifer, I know Brian, you're here for conifer, Rob, you're here for conifer, why don't you do the conifer thing next? I mean, we have a discussion about it, right?
Well, I can, I don't think we've discussed it yet, but I can set the table, I like the
Alright,
hollow.
while you set the table, I'm just taking a quick bath.
I thought I'd do.
Yeah, keep on going.
Alright, well,
We know the table.
twice before conifers come in and ask for an extension of time on their special use permit under the town code, it's an 18-month duration. They're now back again, there's a letter request in the packet, they've asked for another extension to bring them through and including their projected completion date for the project, and as explained in that letter, the reason for the request is that they are getting pressure from their lender, institutional lender and investor to have that extension in place before they go on to the next milestone or phase of their project. In other words, I guess before the lender opens the checkbook and the next tranche of money is released, they advise that they would like to have that permit extension in place. So you've also got a memorandum from the building inspector in the packet. Again, we've been through this twice before. The standard is pretty straightforward. If they have been reasonably diligent in prosecuting the project and there aren't any change in circumstances that would be sufficient to actually go back and revisit the entire project approval, in other words, something really momentous in nature, then there's really no, wouldn't be any grounds to deny them.
There really isn't, or there isn't?
There isn't any grounds, so those are the two things you need to look at. And like I said, the board's done this twice before, taken a look at those two issues, granted 2 extensions. And per the building inspector's memo, nothing's changed.
I know there's some people who are probably here to speak.
You're from Conifer, correct?
I am.
Okay, so maybe, maybe you can tell us why we should give this to you. Aside from the fact we understand the lenders, why should we do
Okay,
this for you in
all right,
view of the
Ed,
fact?
okay. Let me do me a favor. It's a good question. Just, you direct the questions to me, and then we'll direct it to him. I know it's almost semantics, but because we don't wanna be like we're, we wanna try to keep it like, but I think it's a good question, so I'm gonna ask you the question on behalf of Ed Frank. And Ed, you're actually somewhat new to the project. Ed's been involved in this project, and Rob Fleischer from the beginning. And, but I think Ed Phillips sort of explained why you're asking for the extension, is so that it's for your lenders to get to the lenders.
Let him answer.
Can we get an introduction here? I'm not sure we've met, so.
Well, I already know his first name is Brian.
Brian,
Brian Donato.
He only has a first name. Brian Donato, and he's from Conifer. He replaced Andy Boys, right, Bolos?
Correct.
Brian, you're the project manager, is that
Yeah.
right?
He's the project manager.
Low bar.
Okay, so why don't you answer?
Keep it nice, let's keep it polite.
The simple fact of the matter is that we won't complete the construction before the current special use permit expires. And the lender is requiring us to be able to show that we have all the approvals in place to get until we're done construction.
Why do you believe you will not complete the construction timely?
Probably next 5
We've
months.
never presented a schedule that would have said that we would complete it in that timeframe. It's always, the schedule's always been about 22 months for the whole project.
Why haven't
have
you
5
actually
months left on it.
started it?
May 2018.
Well, we finished the remediation, we're actually
May
waiting,
2018.
so the next piece of the project is
Current.
to expand the off-ramp. That's required to be done before we can do building work. We had to come up with a different plan, a different traffic plan, which was into DOT to review. I actually just got notice today that they had approved it, so we will be starting back up in a week and a half. And continuing to move on from there.
Just a question, do you have a copy of this new DOT traffic plan?
No, but sounds like it was just approved today. But they
They actually, I believe the town did get a copy, I'm not sure.
well, we haven't seen it yet.
I wouldn't get it, and Richie probably, he would have been the one.
It'd be nice if that was posted online and we can see what the implications are, so as residents of the town, if we have any input, we could provide that input. That would
Yeah,
be a
I
good
wonder
thing.
if it affects non-state roads.
It doesn't, it's just the off-ramp.
It's just the off-ramp?
It's widening the off-ramp and building a retaining wall, correct?
No, the traffic plan is just so we can accommodate the construction of the off-ramp. So we have to essentially shift the lane so we have room to build it.
So
That was
what
always-
happens during the construction
Yes,
of that
correct.
retaining wall?
Correct.
What happens to the traffic?
Yes. It was always part of the plans, it's a slightly different plan than what DOT originally approved.
Well, DOT may have a greater threshold for pain on what happens on that off-ramp than the citizens of Newcastle do. So I don't know if Richie has this or not, but I think it certainly should be shared with the community and made as transparent as possible.
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet.
I'm not sure.
Town board, I don't know if the
No,
town.
I don't know that you would have, I did review it with Richie today, I met with him, I'm not sure who it was sent to, it may have, I'd have to confirm that, but, it's a DOT road, so they have final approval of anything that's there, I mean, that's the bottom line. It's, like, and again, it's not significantly different than what was in the plan to begin with.
But some of these words like significantly different, things that are gonna happen, we've heard lots of different iterations of this type of language for a very long period of time. We've heard at certain periods of time when you wanted to extend the initial review from back in probably 2013 to 2012, that it had to be done in 2012, otherwise we're gonna lose our funding. That wasn't true. Okay, and it wasn't you who said that, but other people from your company did, so. There've been a lot of kind of lines in the sand that have been drawn. We're still here. I'm not aware that the project funding's been pulled. We're hearing about, and he's brought it up several times today, it's in the letter, that this is all lender driven. I'm not aware that there is any lender. And one question I could ask right here, has there been a lien filed against this land as part of a lending document that we're aware of?
Right.
There is a mortgage on the property.
So we don't get lost in the weeds, what is our legal standing, I mean, these may be reasonable
That might be an
questions.
executive committee.
But what is our legal, in terms of this request,
Right, I said it before.
right, whether or not there's a lien or whether or not, what is our legal, what are we required to
Reasonably
analyze?
diligent, and a change in project circumstances so significant that it would warrant revisiting the underlying project approval. Those are the two criteria.
Okay, but he also just mentioned, so who's the mortgagee?
Bank of America.
Well, it's,
Bank of America, okay.
Rob, but we're, we've, even though people don't like hearing this, and quite honestly, I don't like saying it, we've been guided by
understand, right,
our
but
counsel on this
That's a
particular
choice Bank of
issue.
America made, and they can deal with the repercussions.
Well, I wasn't talking about that, I'm talking about the decisions that we make, I don't care about Bank of America.
No, no.
I do care about the color of Bank of America.
Come on.
But the point is though that our decision with these extensions, our decision with everything around this project has been based on,
I'm not
Very
insensitive,
small closed issues.
I'm not insensitive to the legal liabilities and the fact that there's non-existent support for some of the opinions in this room. But the previous extensions were made when?
I think they've been 18-month
No,
intervals.
but prior to the,
There's been one extension, is my understanding.
and that was done, how far in
I think
advance?
there were two extensions.
There's been two extensions.
Two extensions, how far were they done in advance?
You guys might have only done one.
We did one.
Yeah.
Ed, do you know how far they were done in advance?
I recall at least one of them being done ahead of time. Maybe you could help me with that.
Certainly ahead of
They
time.
weren't sort of at the 11th hour. They were months before, and certainly one of them was quite a few months before the expiration.
I believe all of them except for the first one were done well before the expiration.
Well, there've been two, right?
Two, this would be the third.
Right, so the first one was, I'm not saying to take it to the week before, I'm not suggesting that, but I'm just trying to understand, were they done 6 months before?
I don't remember.
I don't know the answer to that question.
They were not.
Because like, there are a lot of things that are changing right now in the world, in terms of re-examination of budgets. There's been a new tax bill that was passed, we'll see if it ends up becoming law. There are a lot of things that are happening here. The settlement is now complete. I don't know where the world goes, but it seems like, once you grant a special use permit, you limit the town's flexibility for anything, changes that may happen in between now and then.
Well, let me ask the question, Ed, if we are we in a binding agreement at this stage with Conifer, and what would have to change, if that's the proper question, that would allow us in the next 2 or 3 months to say, okay, back to the drawing board, or okay, you need to stop, because the point is, there may be a lot of things that are changing, but that's not going to change this dynamic unless you're telling me otherwise.
It would be hard, it's hard to imagine, frankly, without getting really pretty far-fetched.
We live in a world
Although
that's kind of hard
tax
to imagine.
credits
my
could change, a
imagination
lot of
is-
things could change.
Well, let me ask you this question,
With the tax, you're right.
But I'm sorry, the types of changes we're talking about aren't sort of these external things that just keep churning along. It's something that relates to the project.
Probably the project itself.
Yes.
Not whether a tax credit would.
No, but it could make it less attractive for
Right.
Conifer or another company to come and actually build anything.
Well, let me ask you this question, which is sort of the same, taking Jeremy's just a little step further. Assuming you grant the extension, but then there is changed circumstances. Now, it could be 3 months down the road, where the extension, if we didn't grant it, it would still be, out there, or it could be 10 months down the road. There still could be changed circumstances. So by granting this extension, does it put us in any, we could always revoke the building permit if there was a changed circumstances too. So I guess that's my question, what's the different standard between just granting the extension versus actually revoking a building permit when there's changed circumstances?
The answer to your question is, that you're never required to put your head in the sand. But if you give me an example of the type of changed circumstance that so, yes, you could always, if something came along that was so significant, it warranted looking at the building permit or revisiting
What does that
secret or.
mean? Oh, so it's more of a secret thing, not a
Well,
final.
I'm just throwing out idea, and I'm trying to let my imagination run wild a little bit, because it's hard here. We all know the site, we all know the issues very well at this point. It's hard to imagine something coming along so significant that essentially pulls the rug out from the project in some way. Suppose there was gonna be a third lane added to the parkway, I suppose, and that off-ramp was gonna go away.
And that could change it regardless
that could
whether
do it,
whether we.
But how
extend-
far-fetched is that?
But like maybe the questions I think you were trying to ask, is there a different legal threshold between revoking the building permit and not granting an extension of the special use permit? If you tell me they're the exact same legal threshold,
No.
then maybe I've got no question.
I mean, the building
But that's not
permit-
what I can't imagine that's the case, because otherwise one wouldn't be an 18-month, iterative process.
A building permit, you could have a stop work order for any number of reasons. If you're talking about revoking a special use permit,
No, we're not revoking, it didn't be
or
revoking.
failing to grant an extension, again, you need,
Let me raise my hand again and ask this very simple question, as simple as it can be. Whether we say, no, we're not going to grant it now, and we grant it in 2 months, it doesn't put us in any different situation from our perspective.
I think you're hearing, Conifer's telling you that it'll put them in a different
Alright, so
situation
then-
potentially, so they're here today.
Okay, so then just to provide us that confirmation and corroboration. We have a responsibility, we can't just pull the rug out underneath them, but then provide it to us, and at the end of the day, if we have to come back and deal with this next week because we have confirmation that this is really an issue and not something else that is going on, doesn't change our footing, right? I mean, we call it a shallow, hollow victory that we said no, and you have to come back and show us, do your homework and show us proof, but if it turns out that they're misrepresenting, then
Brian, would Conifer be willing to provide anything from its, even a letter, some sort of verification, confirmation about the exigency, the need to address it now as opposed to in April or May next year?
Sure. And I think what we're also focusing on, and this is probably for executive sessions, we're focusing on what changed circumstances would warrant us not granting the extension. We also need to consider, and again, this is probably executive session, is even if there are no changed circumstances, but we decide, well, let's just wait to the last possible moment in the expectation, just in case something pops up over the next 5 months, is there any legal liability to doing that?
Right.
And I'm not certainly advocating.
I like-
I'm sorry, Rob, I wanna hear,
Yeah, I'd opt for the executive session on that.
Okay.
I figured, but I wanted to point it out to you that there's two sides to the coin.
Right, and I'm not trying, I wanna be very clear, I'm not advocating that the town take undue legal liability and do things that put us in a bad position. I'm basing a lot of the comments here based upon the history that I've seen all too well, of this project. And look, part of me also says, they're asking for some special favor, what's in it for us?
Well, I don't think unfortunately it works that way.
But I think
You're not
Jeremy,
going there, but I'm just putting the question out there, some of the people ask you to do certain things. I'm not aware of a single town project they've sponsored, or maybe I'm just
I don't think
missing.
it works that way. Kenny's no
I think we
quick
granted the permit for a certain
We've never
timeline,
asked
and we should
you that,
adhere to the timeline which we granted. In other words, there was some rationale at the time that we granted for that period, I think we should adhere to that period.
Or I also think it's reasonable that they provide, if they're coming forward
So
and
let
saying.
them provide and we'll consider it.
Right.
That's
And
all
then,
reasonable, fair.
I just have one other question, so, we just changed residential law, that if you have a building permit and you need to extend your building permit, we increased fees for residents and commercial entities to do that. What, if we need to increase, hypothetically, to increase the timeline for this building permit, shouldn't we also be charging fees?
It's the special permit, not the building permit. The building permit they have is, and they're not asking you to extend the time on that, and there's no fee associated
But
with
aren't they
the-
related?
Not really. I mean, yes, it's the same project, they're both project approvals, but they are apples and oranges beyond that.
I like your thinking though.
Okay.
Yeah.
But maybe we could add this to the executive session next week.
Sure.
Because I think, there's things that may be on our minds that are not being articulated clearly, and I think it should add confusion. So if I just understood everything we want is that if Conifer and Brian could provide, verification of exigent circumstances in the form of a letter or whatever it may be, rather than just claim exigent circumstances, then that would be his next step. Our next step about some of the other issues we can have in executive session, is that about right?
Yep.
The last thing I'm gonna say here, that's a truism,
Yeah, we'll
Is
see if
that-
it's truism or not.
is that I would hope this letter is not deemed confidential and not shared. I don't see any reason why it should not be shared with the public. That seems like a crock that's been done before, and the information was out there on the web where somebody found it. There's nothing, you know, it's already been put out there in a letter to us. The fact that somebody is verifying it, that it's a real statement, should not be a confidential.
Well, I think, since that was your last point, and I'm gonna hold you to that,
done.
we're gonna hold you to that.
Okay.
If we have a desire to make it public, and I think it's a good point, then you should be guided by that the letter will be made public and,
I don't see that as being an issue.
And if
Okay.
there's something that absolutely had to be for legal purposes redacted, we could maybe redact one tiny portion.
Well, I understand the board to be asking for, I don't think will require your lender or you to provide any proprietary, confidential,
Right.
that type of information.
No.
So I don't think we'll have to
just
cross that bridge.
explain the
Yeah.
urgency or the.
And the rationale
the
why they
rationale,
need
right.
it and, so we understand it.
I
Did you
think
understand
there's
that
more
once
than
the
that.
town has a letter like
that?
that?
I think there's more than
public-
that.
Well, it
public
shouldn't
document.
just be a letter from Conifer, I feel
No,
like it should be a
I
letter
will
from Bank of America.
Yes.
I don't think would be an issue, Bank of America wants us to get this, that they.
So what's your?
See if they can repaint the building to a town.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll talk to them.
I hear all that, but the basic question is not being answered. Why should we do anything, and you got the letter I sent you, Nina, why should we do anything for Conifer to help them with their mortgage lender after the way they have treated us? I would like them to explain why we should do anything to help them after they have not acted as a good corporate organization to us. They've sued us twice, they filed a HUD discrimination complaint against us, they have called us racist in media as far away as Singapore. I would like an explanation from you folks why we should help you after what you've done to us. That's point one. Ed, this is for you.
Listening.
The bollard. You're asking about a change. I would like you to ask Mr. Donato, after what, 6 months, why they have not specified a crash-worthy bollard before anything could ever proceed from here. Where is the crash-worthy bollard?
The building inspector has looked at that. We've gone back to DOT to try to get clarification from them as to what they meant in that letter that they wrote to you about, I think it was something to the effect of sufficient to stop or to an errant vehicle, right? Haven't got that clarification. The Chappaqua Fire Department, though, I'm not sure if you remember this, but this is the bollard that's gonna go in, okay. They specify that the bollard should be removable. Alright, so that if they ever have to get people in and out of their
Yeah.
equipment, in and out of there, and in a hurry, they can get that out of the way. The bollard can either be removable or it can be crash worthy. It can't be both, because if it's,
My understanding is that what we did is we expanded the opening,
you did.
But
so
then we
that.
need the bollard, he's saying we need the bollard with the expanded
But
opening.
I think that the I remember the conversations correctly, the expanded opening allowing, I think it was 6 feet?
4 to 6.
4 to 6, right? So it's 3 feet in, 3 feet out, so that if people were running out and firefighters had to run in, dragging their hose behind them, that was adequate. I don't remember that the expanded opening with the bollard was objected to by the fire department.
The bollard came in a different way, so once you went from 4 to 6 feet, now you created at least a
Like with
theoretical possibility.
A car to drive through
That a
it.
car could jump over the 8-inch curb and thread the needle perfectly to fit through that 6-inch wide opening, figure out itself perpendicular to the, okay? So to address that concern, Conifer agreed, right, I think you essentially volunteered to do this, it wasn't something that our building inspector had the
This was
authority to require, it's not something that's in the state uniform building code. They voluntarily agreed to put a bollard in the setback from the 4-foot opening in the walkway. And the fire department asked that if you're gonna do that, make it removable, because we don't want that in our way. If you want it to be strong enough to stop a car, it's not gonna be removable without equipment. In other words, if you get a forklift in there, you can pull it out, but Absent something like that, you're not gonna have something strong enough to stop a vehicle.
Well, then, I think somebody needs to maybe, has anybody showed the Chapua Fire Department the bollard design recessed into the walkway?
That I,
Is there any way,
I could
is
answer
there any way to
that, the answer to that is
mathematically
no, because they have yet to the bollard they specify is not crash worthy.
So Brian, is that, could you give that to your engineers to address and put in a crash worthy one?
No, because you only get one or the other, you get a removable
I'm just-
ballot.
No, I understand, but, so let me, so I think that we missed a
I'm just,
step in
what's the
this.
mathematical likelihood that a car would go perpendicular into that and thread the
small
needle?
car, a small car, 6 feet wide is not gonna,
Right, so what's
my
the
Suburban does not fit through that opening.
the speed
And go
of
over
that
an
and-
8-inch curve at any
Yeah,
kind of speed.
I mean, just
Richie thought it was
mathematically
approaching
forward.
zero.
Zero?
You remember the memo that he wrote to the board? He addressed this, and he said, I don't really put any stock in this,
I mean, to get a car over there
Risk.
to turn completely
yeah.
and then
So
then
what is
get up
the-
speed
what is
momentum
the-
from a stop, really, to gun it.
Wait, so let me just ask another question, what's the point of a removable bollard if it doesn't stop anything?
It has no
Maybe to
use,
slow
that
it down.
you answered your question.
Other than visual?
Well, I guess it depends how fast the car's going.
I think we missed a step,
What-
because
let's-
I don't think we
let's-
went back to
weird-
the Chappaqua Fire Department showing them the bollard design. So they raised it early on in the overall process, saying they knew it was there, they wanted removal. Now that we have the actual design, I don't think we've gone back to that.
Well, I'm sure if it's a design issue, they just wanted a feature, they wanted removability.
Alright, well, let's, the bollard needs to be explored some more. You know, I know you've been talking about it for months, and they're formulating an answer. But Ed, it's not something that's gonna stop the project, this bollard. It's not gonna stop this project, it's that simple. It's something that needs to be addressed, but it's not gonna stop this project.
It's not a matter of stopping the project, it's a matter of making it safe. That's a big difference there, and that's what I'm referring to.
I know, we all wanna make it safe.
There's if we can move on to the other thing. You know what I'm gonna bring up.
Easements.
How, you know very well that the MTA provided a forever sublease, that nothing can ever be built on their adjacent property. It was never known until subsequently, after the Board of Review granted the variances, that the DOT would only provide a 55-year term commencing November 1, 2016. So we are approving a project that at this point can only last for 54 years. So, and we're spending $20 million? What's the justification for that? Especially when I'm hearing from,
Let me-
Rob can back
let
me
me
up on this.
No, he's not allowed to talk anymore, I'm sorry.
There's lots of things they want to say.
I know, you're probably dying back there.
The Board of Legislators is short on money here. And we're spending all this money, and it's only gonna last for a certain period of time. Let me ask the gentleman, or maybe you could ask the gentleman, what happens to your building when the term ends and there is no longer a pedestrian fire emergency egress walkway? Per code, ask your building inspector, cannot be occupied.
I believe Ed has addressed it already in a letter.
It'll still be there,
And?
just the easement will expire at some point.
Yeah, that's fine, so now the building doesn't have a fire emergency egress.
It doesn't have an easement for that existing door and sidewalk to be there, so that there will be an issue. 55 years from now, that will become an issue, and I would presume that whoever's around at that time would go, and if the building's still there and still in service, would go and try to get that renewed.
Okay, so maybe.
Yes, and I will be around despite what you have said
Yeah, I
previously.
don't know.
I thought Ed, that we
Well, that was only 50 years, you're at 55 now.
And I was just about to say that.
I'll let you guys all know.
Right.
Anyone else will be around, I'll be around.
Rob,
We'll go
I
together.
would like Conifer to explain what they're gonna do with their building at the end of the
It's a date. I'll
DOT
see you with
easement
that.
term.
I'll set my clock.
And can they do that?
Ed just explained it, we're going to have to go to negotiate a new
And
easement.
if you cannot get it, then what?
Theoretically, the building isn't occupiable.
Oh, really? After we supported $20 million worth?
And let me interrupt, and I apologize, we have gone over this many times, and this is not the issue that's before us now. And if you wanna follow up with council and have them address that more, but we have a lot of other, this is not the issue. We can ask this question every time.
I got that, but
We can ask this
council
every
has never
time.
given me an
So,
answer.
but this is not the forum for that, again, to
Sorry,
discuss the
council.
same
I have.
issue
But
repeatedly,
you haven't
because we know, we've
satisfactory
heard the
answer.
answer. So so Rob,
What are they gonna do with the building if they cannot?
We have seen
get
the
another
answer.
easement?
It's like Ed said, it's not the answer.
I won't be around, you won't be
Yeah,
around.
but I'm worried about my grandchildren and my great grandchildren.
Richie, not Rich's kids or grandkids, there's a note in the C of O, so 55 years from now, when that comes up, it's flat.
Yeah, but you can see the foolishness of this, I would hope.
I will not try to argue the merits of the fiscal, what you said before, about, whether it makes sense.
To get back to the very beginning here, they're looking for an early extension of their special permit. I think based upon all this, we don't have to give it to them,
Well,
especially the way they treated us.
we will be
And there's
guided,
nothing legal.
we will be guided by our attorneys. And, the issues that you have brought up have been raised before, and it's all being factored into the opinion that we're gonna be given. And I think most of us know the opinion already, but we're gonna have an executive session about it, and they're gonna provide additional supporting documentation, and then we're gonna make a decision. But it's from the beginning, we've been guided by the legal considerations, and that's unfortunately how we have to be guided by this particular project.
Yeah, well, the problem is they're looking for an early.
So we understand.
Let them come as when everybody else comes. I don't think Conifer is privileged. I don't think, that they have anything special about them. They're not entitled. Why are we doing this for them? After they sued us a number of times, filed complaints against us?
And you're right.
Yeah, and if it wasn't all the ladies here, I'd be saying
We're
other
not, and
things.
rest assured, rest assured, we are not making any decisions because we're trying to win them over as friends. I mean, no offense. We're not making any decisions based on that as being our goal.
I will just say, and I think I've said this to Ed, is that, clearly the project is gonna move forward. I don't think anybody here would argue that fact.
Too
But
late.
Don't say it.
I raised my hand.
our goal, and this is, the truth of it is, we are going to be here for at least another 55 years. We wanna be good neighbors. I think you yourself have said that you will welcome the people.
Well,
Yes.
the people have nothing to do with
With open
the
arms,
developer, those are two absolutely
But-
unequivocally,
but-
make no mistake about it, two different things,
But-
period.
At the same time, we are going to
Sorry.
manage the property, and those two are very interrelated. So my goal here is to first get the project done, and two, to be a good neighbor in any way that I can, as the person who's responsible for getting this from where we're at now to completion and leased up.
Are you trying to tell me you wanna make up for past wrongs?
Well,
Alright.
sure, let me just address that so it doesn't go unanswered. This board has never, and this has been before this board for, 3 years? This board has never taken any action based on Conifer exercising its rights by going to HUD, by going to state court, by doing anything like that. This board has at every step of the way hit it down the middle in terms of what made decisions that it had to based on the facts and the record that were in front of it. You know that, you've been here.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, and we're gonna have to talk
Okay,
about that.
alright, come on, we gotta move on to the next thing, I'm sorry. We're not gonna get anywhere as far as this
Ready
project.
for Senate
Thank you.
vote? Who's
Thank you.
supposed to?
But you're gonna, Brian, you're gonna get us that
Yeah,
information.
I'll send it to Ed.
Just make sure that nobody else is.
I mean, it's sort of just from, and if I'm gonna be stopped and stop me if I say something, but it is nice, when developers come to communities, they do reach out in many circumstances. As much as I have issues with Summit Greenfield and Chapel Crossing, they've made many gestures, not, we can think some are big, some are small, but they've made gestures. Just from a corporation to a community, it would be nice
To be a good
to help to
citizen.
change the dynamic of what the people in this community have felt in many ways, again, not about the project itself, not about the people who moved there, but the relationship and the dynamic between the corporation, developer and the community. It would be nice if there was some overtures to build a bridge without a bollard between you collectively and us collectively. Not for nothing.
Well,
We have to be,
But that has nothing to do with our decision-making process.
Can I just, I wanna offer something, cause the last time I believe that I was in front of here, one of the things that you specifically asked about was the generator.
right.
Which,
But that's for them, that's
No,
not for,
that's
that's
an
for
important,
them.
that's an important issue, it's an important issue.
Right, no,
that's a concern, and as part of that, we listened, we provided a connection for
very true, yeah, you're 100% correct, but
I'm just,
that's for them though, as well as you'd wanna do that for people who live there and help them out, that's not us, that's them.
Talking about like
No, but they weren't required to do the
Right,
generator.
strawberry, like be a good
No,
corporate citizen.
Okay, but listen, in all fairness,
Much like all our
in
other
all
merchants
fairness,
do
we've
things
never
with the
reached,
town.
we've never reached out asking them to take part in any activities. It's still obviously an adversarial relationship, let's face it, it shouldn't have, it's unfortunate that it's like that,
I don't know if I would
I just want that to work
categorize this as an
Okay,
adversary.
I guess what I would like to just, I just wanna
There's still
offer.
some people, Hala, who don't want this project to
But
go
that's
forward.
not the town board.
I understand,
Yeah, the
but
town-
What I would like to just, what I wanna offer to that is, let's face it, Tim Fournier, it'll always be an adversary relationship, but he's not here, you know, he's not necessarily the person that's in front of the town. I'm happy to listen to these things and to be helpful.
Conifer and Chappaqua, building fatherless bridges together.
I'm happy to work on that.
that'd be great, listen, when 4 years ago, when I started, I sat down with Conifer and I said, let's work together, and they wanted nothing to do with it. Now, I did the same thing with Chapel Crossing, and we made that project a lot better. Now, I'm not saying this project is gonna become a lot better at this stage, but if we can make it a little better, that would be good too,
Oh, we can't change the location, which is the
Arms are
fundamental
open.
issue.
right?
You don't have to hug me.
Buy the land next to it and build a playground for the kids, that's how you can help.
I'll play
Thank you,
on the
Brian.
roof, play on the roof. All the kids can play on the roof.
Thank you.
Alright, take care, good night.
Santa Cruz stickers,
So,
so,
wait, let's see, Jason, what are you here for anything?
I thought there was gonna be cake.
there's
We actually have
cookies,
cookies.
there's cookies.
We have cookies in the back.
Three else then.
Offer
No,
them
seriously,
and cookies.
is there anything on the agenda? Because we'll do it next.
Yeah, seriously, do you want?
Want cookies?
No.
Go on to the next one.
I need a
Go on
cookie.
to the
Please,
list.
I need
bring
sugar.
Pass the cookies, yeah.
Oh my gosh, did we get cookies?
I need some.
Alright, so the next thing is the oops sticker.
Oops, sticker. Okay, so, Santa Pro, the people that, process our single stream recycling are no longer will be accepting, recyclables in plastic bags. They gunk up their machines and basically they are being discarded as trash.
Well, let me get Martin back here, because you know, something, honestly, I'd like him to be in this discussion. Yeah.
So I think he's talking to Ed, to Dr.
Yeah, but this
Fru.
Yeah,
is,
but,
this
Why don't we
is,
move on to another topic?
we're gonna need, yeah, okay, wait for the comeback, because we want this, we wanna
We
get the
go to
word out.
landmark designation, that's
Landmark
such an easy
designation
one.
to
No, it's
Hamilton,
about the oops.
okay? We're
Yeah,
gonna
get
take
the word
into,
About the what?
this the Nicolason house, isn't that
You
gorgeous?
gotta get the word out. I want- I
To
want Martin
Hamilton.
to be-
Whose house is that?
Eric Nicolason.
That's his house? That's very pretty, yes.
Fabulous. Anyway, for their up for landmark designation, okay, so we'll be setting a public hearing on that.
Perfect.
Okay, Cold War tax exemption, this is about to sunset. So Josh would like to be able to offer to town board as a local law that we would take and extend it. We've got permission from the legislature to move forward. Donation of the weeping willow trees. So in front of the Chapel Animal Hospital, there are two beautiful old weeping cherry trees, sorry. And they're valued at $1,600. Chappaqua, Westchester Tree Life was going to move them for us for a price of $1,600 transplant, but council has informed us that we can't pay that kind of money. So they have graciously offered to move them for free for us.
Wow, and they think they're
That's
gonna
nice.
transplant, okay?
Yeah, they said that they would. They're gonna
kidding.
move them by the train station, like behind where that bench is, by the bicycle rack. So they'll be in full sun the way they are now. Steve Coleman picked out a spot for them. I was hoping to be able to use them in the streetscape, but they have to move them too quickly, because they're gonna demolish the building soon. So it would be, we'd accept the donation and we would put a $1,600 credit towards their donation to the tree bank.
Yes.
That's great.
Thank you. So that'll be on for
I
next
can't
time.
believe it's gonna work.
They tell me that, we'll try.
If they die, do we get
Oh,
a
he's
donation?
back, okay, Santa Pro,
We waited for you for this.
sorry. So,
I ran to read the cookie jar.
I was serious about that. So, our, Santa Pro is going to start putting these green oops stickers, on recyclables that are in plastic bags out at curbside.
Well, let me just backtrack for a little bit, because you missed the beginning. What happens is, if people put their recyclables in a plastic bag, come January 1st, 2018, they're not gonna take them, and they're gonna stick this oops sticker on it.
Even
Because,
those like blue recyclable bags that look like they should be
because
recyclable.
these bags apparently are clogging up the recycling machine in Brewster, so they're gonna stop taking recyclable bags. So what we need to do as a town board is, and you can help us certainly if you want, we need to get the word out to residents that they can't use plastic bags for the recyclables. Now, Hala had a good idea, or Lisa had a good idea, I think together we had a good idea where, I mean, some people, don't really wanna just put their recyclables in an empty garbage can. So you could actually use a liner that stays in the garbage and just don't tie it, and then Santa Pro would take the garbage and just dump the whole thing into
hope the bag
the
doesn't
truck
matter.
and keep the bag intact. But the point is though that if people go to a store and buy a blue recyclable bag and think they're doing the right thing by using it and then put it by the curb, they're gonna wind up with an oops sticker and have the bag sitting there.
Okay.
So where do people put the recyclables in the bin?
Yeah, in a bin,
Or just
we
the
sell
garbage
open
can.
Or for
bins
those of
also
us whose, that little tiny bin doesn't quite make my
I have a big
recyclable
garbage
for those things,
Right.
yeah,
You
they
can
have.
get the big toter from
I got a
the,
big toter.
recycle.
Yeah, I got the big toner too,
Center,
but
that's what I
I like
have.
using the liners.
But it could
Yeah, I
get
found big
gross.
45
I have 55
Gallon.
gallon ones.
Yeah,
I
I
don't care,
yeah.
55 gallon
You
garbage
guys are
bag
hooked up.
and put them in, and then it keeps your can clean, but they can dump everything out of it and not
Should
leave the bag,
clarify
leave
with
the
them
bag
that they
in
will
the
do that. They may
in the
just-
toter.
They,
And yeah,
they
you
have to,
could
there has to
still-
be a way to keep that bag though attached, so whether or not
Yeah,
you
yeah.
duct
You
tape
could
it
put bungees
to
on
it
it
or
or-
Put a
bungee or
bungee.
something.
And you can replace the bag every so often if you want, but then
Right.
that bag goes in the regular garbage, not the recyclable.
Okay, so, and we've also got the new Santa Pro calendar coming out, and so this is going to go in the garbage, the Santa Pro mailer that goes out to everybody, and it's gonna have a back reminding everybody to use their reusable bags, okay, so that's gonna go in the mailing, so, another set of eyes, if you guys wanna look through it and just, if you can, small enough for you, I'll send it around electronically, you can take a look.
But this
Doing it for 4 hours
is
tomorrow.
gonna be, this oops thing is gonna be a problem. Come January 1st, we're gonna be getting a lot of
Complaints about it.
complaints about it.
They're already doing it down at the recycling center, so basically what our single stream recycling or processing group has told us is that big container that we have down at recycling, if there are too many of these plastic bags in it, they'll just reject the entire lot of it and all go in as garbage. And right now, although Hala had a good idea of, ripping open the bags and doing it, they told us that all they're doing is taking those bags full of recyclables and they're just being diverted as trash, which is just really a shame, yeah. But
So all the
it's
work
just too
to-
much of, it's too much volume and they can't handle it. They had told us when we went to single stream that they were not taking plastic bags anymore, and now they're serious about it. I guess maybe other communities were a little bit more vigilant about it than we were.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Next is the farmer's market agreement, for 2018 and 2019, it's the same terms as it is now, it's just that we're gonna extend it for the 2 seasons, April through December, both years. And it has on it the same, understanding that when the recycling center is not closed on those, several days of, July 4th weekend or Memorial Day or Labor Day and maybe Veterans Day, that the farmer's market's gonna be responsible to bring out the trash and then discard it, okay, the way they do now. Let's see, do you wanna do the LED stuff, Rob?
I thought we were gonna.
You wanna hold over, or whatever you want to do, okay.
They had asked, they're trying to gather a little more information, I think.
Yeah, for the board, okay. Let's see, we have a cash bond agreement, for 19 Heathcote. That's gonna be on the next agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, age requirements, I apologize, okay, let me back up. Age requirements for special refuge services. Right now, the way it works is that if you are 70 years old and you have a doctor's note, or you're over 75 years old, we give a discount to the special services, the in-driveway services, for those individuals.
Married to one camera?
Go,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It does, it's a
Go
good
do.
discount too.
So, we've actually been approached by, a gentleman who has cancer who is 69 and wanted to know
counts.
whether or not he might be able to do this. So, we want to know, if the board would be amenable to reducing the age. If there's a doctor's note, can we come down from 70? Mary, what did we were gonna come down to?
65?
65.
Sure.
Okay with a doctor's note? Okay. Great, thank you very much.
So this isn't a local law or anything like that, it's just,
It actually is a local law.
so we're gonna have to just put a public hearing on this.
Yeah, we have to do a public hearing
No,
for
I've
it.
seen
Okay.
people who get sick and they just need the
Yeah,
help.
yeah, and I have to tell you, the garbage is just a huge thing, not having.
No, absolutely, I wasn't sure the
And
procedure.
it's an
Yeah.
expensive time when you're that sick.
Yeah, no, okay, thanks, I appreciate you catching that. Okay, also cash bond for lot 3 on Meadow Hill, that'll be on for next time as well. And the last on the regular things is okay, so WCD, this was for our environmental consultant. We actually approved we didn't approve the latest revised agreement, so WCD had originally been approved. On September 6th, we approved the agreement for WCD for a cost of $9,300. What we didn't realize is that there had been a subsequent proposal from them based upon the additional information, the additional services that we wanted from them. It should have been $12,500. Based upon,
This was the air monitoring,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was fine.
Yeah, no, so it was 50 to 60 hours as opposed to
Right.
the 30 to 40. So, and here's the resolution, it's actually dated September 8th.
and then I know what Jeremy's gonna ask you. Go ahead, ask.
No, well,
So since there, is there any way that we can forward this charge on to Conifer, since, we're in discussions as far as the extension?
Should I try to catch Brian?
Why don't you talk to him offline about it?
Okay, I will.
Good question, Jeremy.
thanks.
Was thinking.
So actually, can we get an approval of this evening so that we can pay their bill?
Is it in this
Well,
typed up?
Subject to certain Conifer's approval, sure.
Here it is.
I guess we signed a
Doesn't
contract
that put
already.
us at
too.
a-
Yeah, we signed the contract already, it was just,
Negotiating
yeah, we just picked the wrong one.
Yeah, it's been a long time since they did
I
the.
know Jill's giving it to me, but I think we're still in discussion here.
Oh, sorry.
Can we put it over for a week or two?
We put it over for a week, we already approved,
Yeah,
the
but-
problem is we approved it for the $9,300, we just didn't approve it for the
I get it.
$12,500. Okay.
Anyways, so Ed, speaking of which, I know that
put it
there
over,
was
wait, put it over
some
for a
work being
week.
done on your end regarding how to fund
Okay, can you put this over
the new
to,
water
the
main
11th?
underneath the railroad tracks.
Good thinking.
Have there been any updates on that?
Good call.
We were looking to go to
Yeah,
the
the number
county,
here.
And
and the election happened, and in the last couple of months of the year.
No
this was back
response?
no, this was, right after, maybe just mid-November. There just wasn't gonna be enough bandwidth to get that done by the end of the year.
We're dealing with the transition
so
now.
what position does that put us in?
I'll go back and ask again, but
The new-
part of the.
What about the timing, so this is, well, we can talk to Jill about it afterwards, but I think there was some urgency to the timing, but I guess with this extension, it delays the urgency?
I can't, the time has.
I don't think the extension changes anything.
Yeah. You mean the extension of what we did, or we made
Because they're
to-
not ready to start yet,
No, they are starting, it's the.
but not necessarily the building. So I think in whatever we ask them, we should ask them what their proposed construction timetable is.
I don't think that what they're doing, I don't think that, one of the reasons for doing our work sooner rather than later was to avoid having the building tenanted.
Oh, no, I
And I
understand.
don't think we're I don't think the schedules have changed enough so that that's becoming a problem. I think that correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we've got we almost have what we need to go out to bid on our project. We still have some work to do in trying to find some partners in terms of sharing the costs.
Yeah, we're actively working with
But have we
Con Ed.
approached Conifer?
Have we, I have spoken to them about, I'd rather talk about that offline. Because
Okay.
there's some legal issues that you'll recall when I mentioned them that I wanna kinda go through with you,
Okay.
okay?
Fair enough.
Okay.
Motion?
Okay, no, we've got payment, okay, so we do have some resolutions.
Move to authorize the department heads and other non-union employees to carry over up to 5 vacation days and cash out up to 3 vacation days, with the exception of town engineer Bob Cioli, who is authorized to carry over 5 vacation days and cash out 10 vacation days.
Second.
All in favor?
I move to authorize the town supervisor to sign an employment contract with the town administrator.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to accept, you're welcome. I move to accept the retirement of Police Sergeant Heather Rudisil. And Sergeant Rudisil's retirement is effective December 16, 2017. We thank the Sergeant for her 15 years of dedication and service to the residents of Newcastle.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Keep going, Adam.
I move to promote Sergeant James Tumser to Police Lieutenant effective December 6, 2017, an annual salary of $132,455. This promotion is subject to a probationary period of a minimum of 12 weeks to a maximum of 52 weeks.
Second.
All in favor?
I move
Just
to
change his
promote
title, Mike, thank you.
Police Officer Nicholas Casatino to the rank of Police Sergeant effective December 6, 2017, at an annual salary of $118,681. This promotion is subject to a probationary period of a minimum of 12 weeks to a maximum of 52 weeks.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Anything else?
I move to approve payment of claims in the amount of $447,710.68, listed on the summary AP check report by ID parameters report and detail voucher detail report, both dated December 4th, 2017. Checks will be issued and mailed to each candidate listed on Wednesday, December 6th, 2017.
All in favor?
Aye. And I move to approve payment of claims in the amount of $45,642.40. Am I bothering people? To Town
Yes.
of Newcastle retirees to reimburse them for Medicare Part B premiums paid for the second half of 2017, listed on the summary AP check report by ID parameters report and detail voucher detail report, both dated December 4th, 2017. Checks will be issued and mailed to each claimant listed on Thursday, December 7th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to get out of here and go home,
Second.
aka adjourn.
Is there anything else?
Not too bad. No, I don't think so.
All right.
Felt like a long meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.